Oh. Order, please rise for Mayor Michael Fougere.
Please be seated, everyone. Good evening and welcome to the April 30th meeting of City Council. Before we begin tonight's agenda, I wanted to have a conversation about a program to recognize the administration. At the end of May, the City of Regina will receive the Campaign of the Year award from the Canadian Public Relations Society. This is to acknowledge the excellent work done by our city on the Buzz on Bugs campaign. And the campaign has helped our Parks and Open Space Department to provide the best platform of information to the media for pests, forestry, horticulture during the summer. The program is streamlined in our internal processes to deal with the significant intake of interest from the administration and from the media, and made efficient use of personal hours at a time when our staff are working hard to make sure residents can enjoy the outdoors as much as possible. The centerpiece of the campaign was a release of the 300,000 ladybugs in Victoria Park to deal with the growing aphid problem. This well-executed event brought about 600 people to the park to learn more about natural pest control and enjoy some fun ladybug cupcakes. The Buzz on Bugs will be back again this year, and for good reason, as you can see. So on behalf of City Council, I want to thank you and congratulations to City Manager Chris Holden, Kim Onwright, Executive Director of City Services, Alan Clay, Director of Communications and Customer Experience, Ray Morgan, Director of Parks and Open Space, and Russell Irick and Karen Zipshin, I think are in the audience. If you could stand and recognize as well. Let's give them a round of applause for the great work they did. I think the pest control you did, the ladybugs that you had out in the park in Victoria Park was a great hit, and it was covered very well in the media. It was a good job, well done, a great idea. On that note, if I could have a motion to confirm the agenda tonight. Councillor Hawkins, a seconder, please.
If we do that, I'd like to move that we affirm the agenda, but that we do so at the call of the chair, and I'd like to move that the agenda include a hard stop at 11 o'clock.
How about if we decide at 11 o'clock where we're at on the agenda?
My concern is that agendas are becoming longer and longer. There's 1,000 pages of material to support this agenda, and I think this is something that we have to deal with. So this is just my way of signaling that I think this is a concern that we should deal with.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the agenda at the call of the chair with a hard stop at 11 o'clock. Do I have a seconder? Okay, Councilor Fundura. All those in favor? Opposed? Let's do that again. All those in favor of the motion?
I'm in favor as well.
Okay. Those opposed? Motion is carried. We'll stop at 11 o'clock. Okay. So we'll go on to the look at the minutes from the March 26th meeting. Have a motion to adopt that, please. Councilor Brasciani. Seconder, please. Okay. Councilor Murray. Any errors, omissions, or comments on the minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So we move on to our first order of business on delegation advertised and public notice bylaws and related reports. Jesse McDonald and Jesse Exner, please come forward. If you could identify us, who you are, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for a presentation, and members of council may have questions afterwards.
Sure. I'm Jesse McDonald. I'm owner of 1817 Halifax Street. This is Jesse Exner. He is the operating artist of Blacksmith Art Studio. And today we wanted to thank the council for seeing us, and we also wanted to thank the Regina Planning Commission for working with us on these 2 cases. We don't have a big formal presentation for you today, but we definitely wanted to be present to hear any questions, concerns, or comments about our applications.
Good. Thank you so much. Are there questions of members of council? Councillor Dahl.
Thanks. Evening, gentlemen. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I'm going to show my ignorance to this area. So the first one is about health and concerns. So you're in a residential area. Is there some things like needles and environmental concerns that are produced in the operation of this that would be of concern to your neighbors or to residents?
No, all needles are disposed of in sharps containers and taken to a pharmacy for full disposal. Any and all bandages or like paper towel or anything is soaked up with like a solvent that absorbs all solution, wrapped up in a garbage bag and tied, and then put in another bag and disposed of properly. It's all dealt with through SHA still, and I've been certified in bloodborne pathogens and stuff for all of Canada.
Good. Thanks for that.
And SHA does regulate and work with the tattoo parlors as well, and they've been working with us to.
So just could you carry that point a little farther? So does that mean there's regular inspections? Do people come out and check?
Yeah. Precisely, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And they have their own. SHA has their own schedule of how they do that, and they run it the same as I believe they do hair salons as well.
Okay, good. Thanks. So through the mayor, a second question about comings and goings. And so when someone has an appointment and comes in, are they there for 10 minutes, 15 minutes? Is there a lineup like at the barber shop where there's 5 guys waiting to get their next tattoo done? So could you explain that process, please?
Being a private studio, it's only myself and one artist that would be working there. So in a day, we'd probably see at most maybe 5 people. People are usually there for around at least an hour. Most of the day you'd see would probably be around 6 or 7 people between the 2 people. It's a private studio. We don't do walk-ins at all. It would just be by appointment only. You'd pre-book in advance a couple months, even a couple weeks, and then come in for your appointment date. And sometimes people are there for 5 hours, just one person. So.
Okay. So just to carry that farther, in terms of parking, you're not going to have a big access of people wanting to park and come in and check. No. So you see that regulation that's there is sufficient?
Yes. And even for consultations, they have to book a time to even come talk. So.
Okay. Yeah. Good. Thanks. You've helped. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Gentlemen, I just want to confirm one thing. Your primary interest in this is with a discretionary use approval for your tattoo parlor. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. If there's any other speakers, you can return to the gallery, and we'll now look at the report. This is Report 1823, which is a Planning Commission report on a change to tattoo parlor regulations and proposed personal service establishment. Councillor Donald.
If I could have a seconder, I'll speak to this, please.
Okay. Councillor Stevens.
Thanks. So really there's 2 aspects here. There's a change in terms of some terminology to be used within the zoning bylaw that changes it from to a tattoo parlor, so that it would be falling within the same place as, say, physiotherapy, esthetician, hair stylist, and so on. And there's also approval for the people here to have a discretionary use, as Councillor Hawkins just asked, to be allowed to work out of the home. So the change is that this is a service that is constant and consistent with other home-based operations, and see that. And again, I asked a question about health and environment to make sure that we're clear on that. So after some discussion at Planning Commission, we saw this as being appropriate and seek your concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Other questions on the report? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. First, I have a procedural question. I'd like to see, there's really 2 matters being dealt with here, and they're unrelated. One is a set of bylaw changes. The other is an application under the current discretionary use provisions. I'd like to ask whether the 2 matters could be considered separately, that is, whether they could be severed. If not, I'll move an amendment to delete the first matter relating to the bylaw.
Ms. Howlett.
Through you, Your Worship. The application at hand is for residential areas, so the application, if it were to do that, it would be not permitted because it's not allowed. That's why we were looking at changing the definitions. So the one is kind of dependent on the other. But if you were to do that, then the discretionary use wouldn't be even permitted because it's not in the residential zone. Does that make sense?
Councillor Hawkins?
Your Worship, that's incorrect. The application was for a discretionary use under the bylaw as it currently exists. That's the only way the application could be made. So what you've got here is an application under the current bylaw for a discretionary use. Attached to that, you have an amendment to the bylaw, which, should it pass tonight, would take place in the future. If it doesn't pass tonight, it is still possible that the discretionary use under the current bylaw would pass, so that the two matters are logically separate.
Well, I'm not sure we're going to debate this one, but I'll ask for clarity and confirmation from the administration how they see it, and we'll proceed from there. Ms. Harlack.
Through your worship, I might ask Mr. Searle to explain the process upon which the two applications came forward.
Mr. Searle?
So your worship, there are two separate matters. The first concerns the amendments to the zoning bylaw that are under consideration with respect to tattoo parlors and the consideration of them as a personal service establishment under the bylaw. That matter would need to be considered first, and then with the passage of the amendments, then the specific application for Halifax Street could be considered through the discretionary use process.
Thank you for that. Councillor Hawkins?
Your Worship, I disagree, but I won't press the point. I'll move an amendment, and the amendment is that Clause 1, that the application to amend the zoning bylaw and then A through D be deleted from this motion. And I'll speak to that if I can get a seconder.
Seconder for the amendment. Councillor Massanelli? Okay.
Thank you very much. I support the discretionary use application for the tattoo parlor. I think it's appropriate under the existing bylaw as it is today. What I do not support is the amendments to the bylaw which would remove from the discretionary use category applications for tattoo parlors so that they may be had in residential areas. I think there's nothing wrong with the current bylaw. The current bylaw requires that it does not permit tattoo parlors without a discretionary permit to be in a residential area. My argument on this is very simple, and it's just that residential areas are different than commercial areas. Residential areas are for residents or for families or for parks or for trees. We want to reduce commercial activity to a minimum in residential areas. That's why we zone residential and commercial. Now, I understand that there are some personal services provided in residential areas, mostly with respect to hair. I think it's largely historical, but for whatever the reason, I don't think it's justifiable to extend commercial activities into residential areas, in part because they're residential and it'll affect the character of the residential areas, but in part we want commercial activities in areas zoned commercial, as for example downtown. So I'm not in favor of this number one, and I would ask council to remove this from this application. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Flagel.
Thanks. Before I decide on any of this, I need an answer. What's going to happen to all the home-based businesses that are in residential areas already in place, and not just hairdressers? I'm talking about, I'll pick some, Amway, Tupperware, nail gel places. What happens to those if this amendment goes through?
Ms. Harlack?
Through your worship, those different uses, like they already have opportunity under personal service establishments, so that's fine. And then if you're running a business that doesn't have people coming to them, then it would be, you wouldn't need a permit. But perhaps I think the one thing that we need to explain is this zoning right now is MX, and right now that's not actually a discretionary use. And Mr. Searle can explain that further, and might want to add on to what Councillor Flagel was asking about the impacts of this.
Mr. Searle?
So, Your Worship, Ms. Howerluck is correct. The zoning of the property right now is MX zoning. Tattoo parlors are not permitted under the zoning at this time. If we take tattoo parlors and we group them into the land use classification personal service establishments, a personal service establishment is a discretionary use within the MX zone. So that would be the application for the MX zoning. With respect to the residential businesses, we review those on a case-by-case basis to determine compliance with the requirements in the bylaw for how they operate in terms of the standards and so forth. There really would be no impact on what's been approved through that process for previous applications at this time.
So let me just say this: if you have a business that's a home-based business already, and there are people coming to it, 5, 10 people getting their nails done, as an example, because I know of a couple of places, is that any different than a tattoo parlor where there's going to be 2 or 3 people maybe a day?
Ms. Howerluck?
That's what we're considering. That's why we're recommending that tattoo parlors be considered under the personal service establishment, because that's the exact criteria, is that it's similar to that in the sense, as the applicant had indicated, everything has to be done on an appointment basis. So it's not that people are coming and going at all times like in other establishments. And that's why we felt that an amendment to the zoning bylaw was warranted, because it is in our viewpoint, it's similar to all of those other services.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Other speakers? Mr. Stevens, sorry. Councillor Stevens, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Just for clarification, Councillor Hawkins' concern is we'll see potentially a big shift in residential neighborhoods. This wouldn't open the door to an easy transition in an area exclusively zoned residential to all of a sudden have tattoo parlors and nail salons. We're talking specifically about areas zoned for mixed that then could have tattoo parlors included in the spectrum of these small home businesses that could enter those areas. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Howerluck?
Through your worship, that's right. Wherever personal service establishments are either a permitted use or a discretionary use, then we would operate them in the same fashion as we would any other. So depending on what in residential areas is permitted, because we have so many different residential zones, it would really be whether or not the personal service establishment would be allowed.
Perfect. Thank you. So,
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other questions? I have a couple questions just to understand. This is currently a non-conforming use. Is that correct, Ms. Howerluck?
Through your worship, that is correct.
So during the process of evaluating the application, was there any reason why we didn't look at a contract zone for this particular one and wait for the review of the entire bylaw review, which we're trying to do now, and deal with it at that time as a broader discussion piece? Ms. Howerluck?
Through your worship, that's something we could have considered. At this point, we have done a lot of work and analysis already with respect to the review of the zoning bylaw and some of the definitions. We felt this was the way to move forward, to allow the applicant to do it, but also to update the bylaw in a more contemporary way. But definitely that could have been something. The regulations around contract zones through the Act are quite specific. So we would have to review whether or not it would meet the Planning and Development Act for a contract zone.
If the motion's concurred and we go with, and just for clarification, Councillor Hawkins, you're saying all of number 1? The entirety of number 1 and just go with number 2? Is that what? That's how I interpret what you were saying.
Your worship, I thought that was the only choice available
Okay.
to me.
I wasn't sure whether you stopped at E or went to the entire, all of 1. So if the motion is passed as, an amendment is passed as brought forward, we're going with number 2 and number 3, that would allow the application to go through and the business to continue on. Ms. Howerluck?
Through you, your worship, I'll start and then I'll ask Mr. Searle to perhaps add. Currently, there is no tattoo parlor use within the MX zone. So there is no discretionary use to apply for it. It is only allowed if the First Amendment goes through, which is the updating the definition of personal service establishments. That's why I was saying at the beginning they're contingent on each other, because first we need to change the bylaw or the definition to add it, and then the discretionary use could be approved because we're adding that as one of the uses. So right now it's actually not allowed under the MX.
Understand. Okay. It's not how I would have approached it. I would like to see the separation, but Councillor Hawkins, do you want to close debate?
Yes, thank you. This is simple. Do we want to increase the amount of commercial activities in residential areas? I don't think we do. I don't think the public's been consulted on this. I don't think this is an appropriate way to approach this question. This is a significant change. And while I have no problem with the application that's been made, I would have no problem with it being approved in some fashion, in some way. But what I object to is the opening up of the bylaw to increase commercial activities in residential zones. I think this is something that needs more study. I don't think this is something that should have been brought to council separately when a bylaw review is going on. I'd ask for concurrence in this, and what concurrence would mean would be that the administration would have to go back and find out a rational way to handle a situation in which, so that we don't have increased commercial activity in residential zones, but that where appropriate on a case-by-case basis, that activity might somehow be accommodated. I don't want to fashion that before council, but the principle here is we don't want to open up residential areas to more commercial activity.
So, no other speakers. I'm going to call the question on the amendment. We're all clear on what that is. We delete your recommendation is to delete number 1. I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
In favor.
Opposed? Motion's carried. Sorry, defeated. I'm sorry, it's defeated. So we'll go back to the main motion. Councillor Hawkins, you have 3 minutes left on your original time. That's when you came into discussion. Do you have any further comments?
No, I have no further comments. Thank you.
So I'll look through the list of those who would like to speak to this. Call the question on it. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Move on to the bylaw. Councillor Massanelli.
Okay, CR 18-24. That the Executive Director of Financial and Corporate Services as the city's proxy be authorized to exercise the City of Regina's voting rights. Oh, I'm in the wrong spot, sorry.
I think the wrong one, Councillor Massanelli.
Yeah, I got you. Sorry.
2018-18.
I got you. Yeah, I got you. Okay. 2018-18, the Regina Zoning Amendment Bylaw. I move, seconded by Councillor Murray, that bylaw 2018-18 be introduced and read a first time.
Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Council, having completed its review of Report CR 1823, will now consider the associated bylaw respecting proposed rezoning to allow a tattoo studio to operate from a residential business. If there's anyone in the gallery who wishes to speak to this particular bylaw, I would ask you to indicate your interest at this time. There is no one, Your Worship.
I'll call the question on first reading. All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried. Councillor Massanelli.
I move, seconded by Councillor Bresciani, that bylaw 2018-18 be read a second time.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried.
I move, seconded by Councillor O'Donnell, that Council hereby consents to bylaw 2018-18 going to third reading at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? It's carried unanimously.
Okay, and I move, seconded by Councillor Findura, that bylaw 2018-18 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Thank you, Councillor Massanelli. Move on to delegations and related reports. Sandra Masters and Tim Reed. Good evening and welcome to City Council. If you can identify yourself for the record, who you represent, you have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards.
Good evening, Your Worship, City Council. I'm Sandra Masters, Board Chair of the Board of Directors of Regina Exhibition Association Limited, and with me is Mr. Tim Reed, our CEO and President. And we're here to present, according to our UMA, to City Council, 3 items before you. Our first would be our board slate, the vetted and presented Board of Directors for the upcoming board year. In addition, the receipt of our 2017 financial statements, and then appointment of our auditor for the upcoming year.
The floor is yours.
As it relates to the first item, the Board of Directors slate before you, I think the process is we depend a little bit more on the recruitment process. However, we do post an advertisement in the paper to see if there's any interested parties. And then we, as a Board of Directors, we have some direction internally as to what it is we're missing in terms of skill sets, because we prefer to hire skill sets first, always, and then we look at diversity issues. Our Board of Directors is 40% female, 60% male, as it stands right now. We had 1 vacated position after the board slate was presented to you. We had a 38-year-old female member who she's moving away from the city of Regina to teach at the University of Saskatchewan. And so we have a vacant position that we choose not to fill at this point in time, specifically because we actually would like to focus in on a skill set either related to legal or financial services, financial acumen, and preferably, again, of gender being female. And I think our focus in terms of our goals and objectives as a Board of Directors is always the sustainability of the site, the operational efficiencies, and then community involvement and engagement. And so looking to that would be the board slate before you.
Okay.
Would you like me to move on to financial statements?
Your Worship? Quick overview. You've got about 3.5 minutes to go, so you can.
All right, I'm going to keep going.
You don't have to fill all the time if you don't want to, but you have that much time.
Okay. As it relates to the 2017 financial statements, you'll see before you, you have received within your package, of course, our 2017 financials. You can see that net to the bottom line, we are negative $1 million. A large portion of that has to do with the gear up for the stadium and a few one-time expenses. Investment in R&M remains stable, and in fact, revenue lines remain stable as percentages. In terms of, we're a little offside in cost of goods sold as it relates to kind of one-time items that we don't expect to have recurring again in 2018. Tim, did you want to offer anything?
I think just in summary of the financial statements, as most of you know, it was an exceptional year of change for Real. We introduced the new ITC. We also introduced the operations of the new Mosaic Stadium, which was a year of exceptional growth, as shown by the 32% growth on the revenue side and 32% growth on the expense side. So if you net out the two, there is a gap on the expense side where I think it speaks to purely the efficiencies of new operation. 2 line items should be seen as opportunity for us, which is cost of goods sold, as well as supplies, equipment, and contracted services. And the reality of that is I think that's related to just being a new operation. We've already seen some results at the end of Q1 that speak positively towards the growth as well as the margin performance across the business. And I think what you see in the financials is the takeover of fairly large, fairly complex businesses on a fairly short timeline. And so although we do see a deficient P&L position of $1 million, we don't believe that this creates long-term risk for the stadium nor for the operations of Real. We think it just signifies the opening of a new stadium as well as a new ITC on very short timelines for operations because we wanted them used by the public. And so overall, our auditors, which are your auditors, have completed the audit. It was a very successful audit, and we present the financial statements for any questions you may have.
Good. Thank you very much. Are there questions of the delegation? Councillor Stevens?
Thank you. I was wondering if perhaps you could provide a bit more detail in terms of the expenses. You had mentioned the net loss of $1 million. Could you walk us through how do we account for the increase in amortization, administration, and you'd also mentioned the need to seek efficiencies. Maybe explore that a bit further going forward.
Absolutely. So perhaps what I can do is I can speak to administration first off. There's two elements within the administration that creates the delta that you see in place today. It's about 50-50. 50% of it was the introduction of a new organizational model where, frankly, we hired senior staff to be able to onboard the facilities. We subsequently adjusted the organizational chart, so I don't think that will be a continuing issue, but that was worth about $350,000 of investment. Some of that was contracted labor, some of it was senior staff, but the bulk was people resource. The other 50% of that delta that you see was truly one-time expenses, where we had to bring a consultant in, or we had to buy a piece of equipment, or something that was a one-time expense related to administration. On I think your secondary piece on amortization and depreciation really was related to a number of the investments that we made to onboard the stadium. And you'll notice that the $1 million, or a significant portion of the $1 million that you see in Delta, is the offset between the contributions as well as the amortization. So we'd be happy to give you some detail on it, but that's where you'll see the bulk of the net. It was essentially our investment rate versus the depreciation side of things. The other question was related to cost of goods, I believe, Councillor. And I think that's the item where this speaks to the true inefficiency of a new building and a new sequence of events. If you look at the growth or the margin change, that number is about 40%, where everything else is about 32% on the expense and the revenue side. To your point, I think this is the one that speaks to just improved efficiency. That cost of goods number in our industry should be down at the 30% number. And so I think that's where the opportunity in chasing that $1 million of efficiency is right now.
Thank you. Second question has to do with the revenue side. What are your hopes and aspirations going into the future about how do we boost revenue? That's obviously what we want to do, see these facilities succeed. What do you imagine going forward, and how do we accomplish that?
It's a great question. I think the biggest opportunity we have are long-term partnerships. And what I'll speak to is an event which we just hosted, where we saw exceptional growth and positivity from it. So we just finished hosting the Briar. The last time we had hosted the Briar was 2003 or 2006, and forgive me, I'm still trying to remember the date. But what we did see is we saw a profit growth in that event of almost $500,000. And that was directly the result of the introduction of the ITC, greater floor plan space, and a greater opportunity to host more guests. So not only do we have an impact within the economic impact model for tourism and trade, but we certainly saw it on the bottom line of that event. That being said, I think it's a great opportunity for us to recognize where we can drive economic benefit within the tourism chapter of Regina, but also to the bottom line of Real, where we have an opportunity to bring major events in, such as this year with the Memorial Cup, as well as the Briar. We see the possibilities that bring to us. What I would say is the opportunity is long-term partnerships. And one of the elements of focus that the board has asked us to focus on is extending some of the year-to-year agreements that we have in place. So I use CWA as a strong example of it. Arguably the single largest economic driver that we have in our province, and certainly within our city, in terms of an event. Well, right now that's on a year-to-year renewal. And so if we can extend that to be a 5-year renewal or a 10-year renewal, I think that's where you have guaranteed revenue over a long period of time. And then if we can backfill with one-off events. So to your question, I think we've taken some steps because our footprint is better, is more efficient, and allows growth. But we have to get long-term deals in place, and then we have to fill the gaps in the schedule.
Thank you. Final question. On an annual basis, Real receives about $400,000 from the City of Regina. Where does that appear in the financial statement here? And can you give us some examples of where that money is invested in the facility?
Absolutely. So I'll double check with our finance team just where it actually plugs through, because on the roll-up I want to make sure I give you an accurate answer. However, it goes directly into the infrastructure. I think it's really important to understand that in many ways Real is just an extension of the City of Regina. Although we operate as a part-time, which gives us flexibility to make decisions that align with the City of Regina, but perhaps somewhat differently, and be somewhat more aggressive in terms of the business that we have that is entrepreneurial in nature. Every dollar we earn actually goes back in the infrastructure that you as a city own. And at some point when the partnership between Real changes or morphs or comes to an end, it really is a facilities management agreement, like so many of the triple Ps that you would have in other avenues of your business. We have an obligation to maintain your assets on your behalf so that they're going to be in strong quality going forward. So ultimately, those $400,000 go directly back into the infrastructure that is yours, and into the deferred maintenance on arguably as large a piece of civic infrastructure as we have. And so it does go directly to the bottom line. I'll confirm with Milton on where it actually plugs in.
$6 million. I can tell you that there was $6 million invested in the capital and R&M on the site, and that's everything from renovated shower rooms in the Cooperator Center to new lights in the Brandt Center, some paving repairs. It truly is. It's $400,000 of a $6 million reinvestment back in the site.
Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other questions of the delegation? Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for coming forward tonight. I'm glad to hear the word sustainability and moving forward with the stadium. And I know that Riel has had a lot on its plate, opening up the International Trade Center and all that. But I do want to just clarification on the amortization, because that is at $5 million, and I think we talked about, I think there was $1 million, so it's about a $4 million different gap there. So is that somewhere put away for reserves or equipment, or where is that $4 million?
And forgive me, I just want to make sure I understand your question. The $4 million that you're speaking to is on the revenue side?
That's right.
On the contributions and other income?
Right.
And then the offset is under the amortization of $5 million?
That's right, yeah.
And so I actually think, we have our CFO here, I'm going to invite him up, but I do think that that's the gap. So it's a gap in terms of the amount of dollars that we're investing versus the dollars that we're seeing on amortization. So Milton is our CFO, and I'll have him speak to it because he's better at that than I am.
Thank you.
Good evening, and through your worship. Yes. So you will see that contributions and other income at $4.4 million is less than our amortization. So when we receive money from other agencies like and government, from the City of Regina, from the province, from the federal government, that is treated as contributions and other income as the asset is amortized. When amortization grows over and above that, that's reflecting our own cash put into capital from our own operations.
Okay. So the cash is sitting there, or?
It's been spent. It's an accounting adjustment saying that it's sitting, it's called a reserve, but it isn't a cash reserve. It's not something that we can spend again. It sits as a liability on our balance sheet until such time as it gets matched to the amortization of the asset that it bought.
Okay, so thank you for that explanation. Again, I think the goal is that our hope that the city, that with the stadium and all of the assets there, that they become self-sufficient, that there's not a need to come back to the city every year for the $400,000. That's the goal, and I get it that it goes back into the capital. But I think the big piece, I think for city is the residents want to make money.
Right? I just asked you, do you have a question to ask them? You can.
So thank you for the presentation and thank you for the clarification.
Those comments are certainly would be appropriate when we have the report before us. There appears to be no other questions. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery. I will now ask Councillor Massinelli to introduce the report. This is the REAL's 2017 annual report.
That the Executive Director, Financial and Corporate Services, as the City's proxy, be authorized to exercise the City of Regina's voting rights in Real at the annual general meeting taking place on May 1st, 2018 as follows. A, receive the annual report and audited financial statements for the 2017 operating year, Appendix A. B, the following directors be appointed to the Real Board of Directors. Blaine Kazema, May 1st to April 30th, 2019. David Sinclair, May 1st, 2018 to April 30th, 2019. Kathy McCrum, May 1st, 2018 to April 30th, 2021. Tiffany Stevenson, May 1st, 2018 to April 30th, 2021. Grant Wozniak, May 1st, 2018 to April 30th, 2021. And finally, C, appoint the auditor selected by the City of Regina through the Real for proposal process as auditor of Real for 2018. Pursuant to Section 149 of the Non-Profit Corporations Act, 1995, Saskatchewan.
Can I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Flegel. Discussion on the report. Councillor Donald.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a couple of comments, not so much specifically to what's here, as I support those, but maybe a little bit of historical comments if I could. Sometime a long time ago, someone, and I don't know who, saw the wisdom in terms of establishing a facility in the middle of our city. And it has continued that way, sometimes called a sport corridor, sometimes referred to in other veins. And it brings people not only to the core of the city, but employs people who live adjacent to the park in great numbers. I want to applaud that. Second one was, and go back a few years, and the then board of directors and the then leader, Mark Allen, came for us with an overall plan for how to redevelop this park. It was full of horrible, decrepit buildings, and they had a plan for how to bring this forward. And now we have an international trade center, a new stadium, multiple hockey rinks, an indoor facility that can play soccer half the year, and I think it's like no other. And so there was a great deal of wisdom, and I want to applaud those people. I think what's going on now is that we have an opportunity to work with some new folks, and I want to welcome Mr. Reid and the new board and say, you know what, we have a bright future. But also I want to reflect back on the people in the past who did a great job for us. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Stevens.
Just one question for administration. The delegation gave a nice overview of the challenges ahead, but the opportunities as well. The learning curve with the stadium, I was wondering if administration could comment on how this learning curve compares to the planning that went into the stadium in the first place and kind of the business model there, and when we might see an update on how the stadium has fared in terms of what was projected when it had first been built and planned.
All right.
Through your worship. So I think on the operational side, if you look back to the beginning of the year, so transitioning the stadium over to real, different size, different operation, there were a lot of challenges in that. I think what Mr. Reid has referred to in terms of getting used to that change is really an understatement. This building functions differently than the old Mosaic Stadium, and I think we just need to be patient, work through the challenge, work through the changes. Real has been a very good partner, and I think the upcoming season is going to be a little bit different in terms of how we approach it, how they approach service delivery, and we're looking forward to it. We are bringing a report forward in May for council to update council on financial model and the operation, what we've learned in the first year of operation. So we look forward to having the opportunity to present that to council.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other speakers to the report? Councillor Massanelli, could you take the chair for a moment, please? To you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I firstly want to welcome Mr. Reid to the City of Regina. He comes highly regarded in his previous position and brings a skill set I think that is critical to the future of Real. And we have gone through, as Councillor O'Donnell intimated, a long period of growth where we replaced buildings and had a vision and a plan that came to fruition under Mark Allen. And now Mr. Reid is there to bring forward, I think, a consolidation of this, to bring more revenue, to sell the park, to make sure that people around the world know what's here, what we're able to market. So I'm pleased that he is here. That is a skill set he's done in the past, so we look forward to that. Lots of discussion about, as Councillor Stevens just mentioned, about the stadium. We also talk a bit about the other facilities, the International Trade Center. Brand new buildings. We're looking at the business model to ensure that it is sustainable and that we're not reliant on the City of Regina or others to subsidize those areas of revenue for us. But the stadium is unique, as Mr. Ronway has said. It's a different beast completely. We constructed this as a P3, design, bid, build, but not operate, maintain. The city would not do that. We had PCL as a partner to build it, but the operate and maintain is exclusively done by REAL, which is a brand new idea to the city. So there is time that's required to iron out the curves, so to speak, and make sure things are smooth here. But with Mr. Reed here and the administration under Mr. Wright and the city manager, with absolute confidence we will see that we'll see a more sustainable pattern of growth and source of revenue to sustain those, and also to maintain and operate them, and look across the whole facility to make sure that those new buildings and ones that have been there for a while will be maintained in a way that will do us all proud. So my point of this all, Mr. Deputy Mayor, is to welcome Mr. Reed here and Ms. Masters as the chair of the board, to say thank you for the work you do, to look at our assets that we have there, to continue to market them, maintain them, and make them the showcase of Canada. Thank you very much. Councillor Massenet, do you want to close debate? Okay. I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next report is delegation is Amber Richards on a proposed yoga studio on Pasco Street. Good evening, Ms. Richards. If you could identify yourself and who is with you for the record. You have 5 minutes for your presentation, and there may be questions afterwards.
Okay, good evening, everybody. My name is Amber Richards. I'm the owner of Oxygen Yoga and Fitness Regina South. Here with me tonight is Rachel Suttle. She is the Oxygen Yoga and Fitness franchise owner of Saskatchewan Territory, and she actually owns a studio in the north end of Regina. And we're here today. We would love to have a yoga studio in the Lakeview community. We believe it would be a great contribution to the community, the businesses in the area, and also the residents. We offer something really unique and special, and yeah, we appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and are happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. That was very fast.
Oh, quick. Well, it's all there, right? Ask away.
Councillor Dow.
Good evening. How are you?
One, let's just describe, first of all, where the studio is proposed. Would you call it kind of a business park, or how would you describe it?
The area?
Yes, immediate area.
The immediate area, I guess, well, where it is in a small little community, Lakeview, so there's a surrounding residential area, but there's also other businesses there, Needed Bakery, there's a chiropractor, there's a hair salon, the hearing center. I think, it would just be, we attract very health-conscious patrons, and yeah, I think it's a great space for a yoga studio.
Hours of operation.
Hours of operation, we'll start running classes about 6:45, well, 6 in the morning. 6 a.m. 6 a.m. And run till about 9 p.m. at night. Usually the classes are about an hour long, and we kind of stop running classes around 11 o'clock. Why don't you speak to that, because you're running the classes right
in the north, the current schedule that we have is we have one class that runs at 5:45 a.m. so people can participate before work, get home, get showered up, and get ready so they can head on with their day. We have 2 classes that run in the morning, 9:30 and 10:45, so we're finished at noon. We have a couple of specialty classes during the afternoons, like mom and baby classes that we will run, and then the majority of our classes are sort of typically outside of our neighboring business hours. So we start classes again around 5:30 in the evening and run till about 9:30 at night, depending on our schedule that day.
And class size?
Typically anywhere between 12 and 25 maybe.
Depending, again, so some of our evening classes we see just by virtue of that's the time that people can attend. It's evenings and weekends. We see a little bit of higher class sizes then. During the day, when typically, again, our neighboring businesses are in business hours, we see a bit of a smaller class size. There's just not quite as many people that can participate then. So anywhere between 12 and 25. I think Amber's studio is max capacity, and it's about 25 participants.
Okay, so if I could get you to react to kind of a summation. You have businesses around you. The parking should work because your busy times are not the other businesses' busy time, so you're not concerned about parking that's there or coming and going or traffic flows.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Councillor Flagel?
Thanks. Hi, and welcome back. Nice to see you. I'm just wondering, you say you're the owner of the South. Where are you located today?
Well, it's just the territory that I own, so it could really be anywhere in the South End. I really want to be in that community and that area. So,
Okay, so you physically don't have a location today.
we do physically have a location. It is directly beside the hearing center. So where Soma used to be, it's 1023775 Pasqua Street, so right beside the hearing center. So we do have a space in mind, and yeah, we're
So you're
excited
just
to
trying to move to a bigger location?
Nope. We want to grow.
We're here today for that space, looking to, so that's the space that has been sort of selected, that we're moving through this process, but currently she doesn't have a studio open in the south end of the city yet.
Gotcha.
Right.
Gotcha. I think it's a great location.
thank
There's
you.
lots of commercial around. Have you had any people come forward and say no, or yeah, come on, fight and go for it?
No, there was nobody that said no, but there was somebody for the project, and actually I'd like to know who that was, because I think that's great, right? That there's
No,
people
sure, of
supporting
course.
it. So,
Offer them a
yeah.
free membership.
Yeah, free membership.
The North Store has been a success.
Yes.
That's right by my place, and I know. Will you be working jointly together, or is it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, because I know the success of the North when I watch people go in and out. I've never been myself, but do you see it expanding even further than what you are in today in both locations?
I think,
or are you happy with the
I
size?
mean, the idea of these studios, that there's sort of small boutique studios that really cater to our real community feel. And
Right.
so what we've seen in the north so far is that it's become, I grew up and went to school in the north end of the city. It's become a bit of a high school reunion every day, where there's a lot of people that are from the north that have stayed in the north that are now coming to the studio. We have seen definitely clients that come from different areas of the city, but the majority of our clients, our members, are from the north, and so I think that we have a real good opportunity to open in the south. I could potentially maybe see one in the east in another year or two, but I would like obviously to see two
Right.
thriving studios before we.
So would this be a drop-in clinic or a membership? How do you?
A little bit of both. So we have a variety of memberships depending on the usage of the client. So we have some clients that come to us that are that love it, and that they found their place, they found their activity of choice, and they will come multiple times a week. So we have membership options for them. We also have members that are marathon runners, or just people that are just coming to reduce stress, and so we have punch pass options for them. So my interest has always been very much in finding a solution that works for that individual, not just something that we're just trying to push a particular membership, but finding something that works and makes sense for that individual.
Through you, just so you know, when did you open the North Store?
January last year, 2017.
So 2017.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Other questions of the delegation? There are none. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we will now look at the next report, Report 25, which is a discretionary use application for recreational service facility, yoga studio at 3775 Pasqua Street. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you very much. If I could have a second, I'll speak to this.
Councillor Young.
So this is the little business park adjacent to Evolution Fitness. That would seem that it would be a natural transition to have a yoga studio in there as well. I asked a couple of questions so that you would understand about business operation. So starting very early in the morning when the other business is not opening, which would be more of a prime time. Mornings tend to be quiet for the others, and then evenings when the other shops are closed. Thought this was a great addition. No issues from the Planning Commission. We seek concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other speakers? Okay. Councillor Flagel.
I just need some clarity on this. So the space is there, and a business goes in there, and why is this at discretionary use?
Ms. Howard?
DCD5 zone, and so recreational facilities, recreational service facilities are a discretionary use in that zone. So this yoga studio would fall under that definition.
Oh, okay. So that the bakery, the hair salon, all these other ones did they have to go through the discretionary use as well, or are they exempt from this DCD, or whatever you call it.
Through your worship, I'd have to ask Mr. Searle what the exact zoning would be for a
I'm just
hair
trying to get
salon
clarification
versus
as
a
to,
bakery.
they're all businesses, but this one, it seems like it's getting pushed into another.
Yeah, it's
Box.
through your worship. As you know, there's permitted and discretionary uses, and so we have to look at the use. And so, because a yoga facility is a type of recreational service facility,
Okay.
so it's for your health, and that's why it fell under that category, and so it fell under the discretionary use.
And the other reason I asked that, and why I asked the lady of when the north one was open, I don't remember having to go through this like June of 2016 for them to open in January of 17.
Through your worship, it would probably have been a different zoning district,
Okay.
and so every zoning district has
Then
different permitted and discretionary.
I don't need the explanation from administration. Then thank you. The issue of parking and all the other kind of stuff, every time it comes up is parking, but I've not heard one complaint from the North Yoga Studio, and it's as close, if not closer, to residential. It's in a strip mall. It's a shopping, restaurants, shoppers, superstore. These are a great little community, and as the one lady said, it's building around a community, and it's a high school reunion every time. And yeah, it's a young generation. But I'm going to vie to try and get all the council out to either the north or the south one, because Lord knows we all need some help. So we'll. Sorry.
Speak for yourself, Councilor Fargo.
Yeah. Well, hey, that's okay. We all go to too many. We have to be at too many functions sometimes. But these are all great things, and these are all community builders, and I'm full support of it. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Fargo. Any other speakers on this report? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Delegation, Gordon Scraper, Cornerstone Holdings Limited. The record who you represent, you have 5 minutes for your presentation as well, and members of council may have questions afterwards.
His Worship the Mayor, members of City Council, my name is Gord Scraper. With me is Caitlin Brown. We're representing Cornerstone Holdings, owners of the Capital Crossing lands. We're pleased to be here in front of council to answer questions with regards to the discretionary use application before you that's been approved or been recommended by City Council or City Administration and Regina Planning Commission. The lands under consideration are by the Capital Auto Mall in Regina Northwest. It's a 20-acre site. It's bordered to the west by Walmart Supercenter. It's Rochdale to the north, and Argyle Street that's recently been extended to the east. Represents 2 full city blocks. Compared to Regina East, Regina South, Regina Northwest has fallen behind in terms of restaurant and retail amenities. With this 20-acre site coming on stream with approval, we have the opportunity to close that gap that's occurred in the city. We've been focused on retail restaurant use. We're proud of the city contribution and working with city administration to extend Argyle Street north. We believe that's a game changer. When you look at the infrastructure on the ring road at Argyle Street with an off-ramp and an overpass, we've now connected that to Rochdale Boulevard and the points north. Has an impact on 20,000 residents living in Twin Lakes, Lake Ridge, and Hawkstone. And to date, we've contributed 8.5 acres of green space to the city, including a 3-acre highly developed park complete with a basketball court and children's playground set. So we're pleased to be here to answer questions. If you've driven the site lately, you've seen that there's some construction on the northwest part of the site. Last fall, City Council approved Brightwater to construct a much-needed local area seniors care center, and immediately on approval, they started construction work through the winter, so they progressed very nicely. Earlier this year, City Council approved Sherwood Co-op to construct a gas bar, convenience store, and a car wash, and they'll be starting within the next month. we're in position to, with approval tonight, to start construction of 4 buildings in 2018. So we're here to, and Caitlin with me is with Property Development Support Services. They prepared the development plan and application, and we're here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. We do have questions. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. Nice to see you again. And just want to flush out a few things so everybody hears what Planning Commission heard. So total number of buildings that you would see on the site at completion, approximately?
We will have up to 10 buildings.
And I think I heard you mention that there'd be 4, if given approval, would start immediately.
Yes.
Could you describe where those would be in the site?
So we're going to start in the northwest quadrant. So if you're familiar with the local area, there's Marks is established, so we'll be starting at that corner. The first building under construction, we're actually in for building permit, would be for one of the big 5 charter banks, so we have the ability to bring that kind of service in. There's a real shortage of the national chain drive-through restaurant uses in Regina Northwest, and so we plans for 4 of those. We're in discussions for all 4 units at this time. So we'll be focusing on building out on Rochdale Boulevard in 2018, starting on the west side, closest to Marks, working our way to Argyle Street. And then in 2019 is when we would like to start construction on the Junior Box Row, which will be lined up right with Walmart and work its way from Walmart eastward to Argyle Street.
Oh, good. Thanks for that. So you are adjacent to an already very large shopping area, large parking lot area. Any success on getting that access for the 2 properties?
Well, we're working closely with city administration on that. The neighboring property owner has provided a plan to the city that I believe the city is in agreement with. We've reviewed it. We're okay to proceed on that basis, but no formal agreement is being reached on how that will be executed.
Good. But you're trying, and I appreciate it.
We are trying.
Thanks very much. Just another comment based on what you had said. So with Argyle Street now open, what if Argyle Street wasn't open? Could you go ahead with this development?
You know, we could, but it would be a very different type of development from the point of view that, you know, for the longest time now, Center Ice might be deemed Pasqua Street in Rochdale, and that we would be off of Center Ice, so to speak. In our view now, we've just opened up Center Ice. You know, there's with the infrastructure in place with an off-ramp and an overpass. I mean, the overpass connects to Tom and O'Neill catchments. There's 6,800 people in Coronation Park that now have direct access to the Rochdale amenities. Anybody going home, even in looking long-term into the future with Dream's future development, they straddle both sides of Rochdale. Capitol Crossing straddles both sides of Rochdale. With that off-ramp, residents will be able to drop in, pick up their restaurant goods or the retail goods, proceed home. So it really opens it up, and it's nice now, I feel, from the city's perspective to really take advantage of the infrastructure that's been there for years at the Ring Road.
I agree. It was a game changer. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks, and welcome back, Gord, and Caitlin as well. Thanks. So the exit through Walmart to your new facility may or may not happen. There's another exit at Vanstone and Rochdale that is part of this, or just in the borderline of it. Any further discussions with SmartSet in terms of how we can get some lights eventually? I think the city's ready to put the lights up, but there was some land dispute or something going on. Is there anybody closer to resolving that issue to get out of the Walmart parking lot?
I mean, with the city, there's signal lights at Pasqua Street and Rochdale, and new lights were put in at Argyle Street. So Vanstone, which you referred to, is the logical halfway point. Vanstone basically doesn't dead end, but it connects right into the Smart Read shopping center, and so signal lights there would not provide access to our property unless we secure a cross-access agreement with the adjacent property owner. And so that is something we're working with the city administration on, but we cannot push them to proceed faster than they choose to.
But nobody's closed the door yet.
Nobody's closed the door. There's no. I feel it will happen. It's just when is the question.
So you mentioned a commercial bank. The wish list of North End people is mid to high restaurant, Winners, Marshalls, Gas Bar, which is going to be coming, Brightwater, which is underway, a gym. Any of those types of organizations are still within the look of coming to the North End?
We've had numerous discussions in the past 3 years with all kinds of retail users. The Junior Box Row, we have proposals out for all 140,000 square feet that could ultimately be developed there. Fitness, we've had discussions with a couple fitness opportunities. We are unsure if the fitness component is what we would like to see under this location. We have lands north of Rochdale that we might like to see a fitness facility at. So the next, we've had lots of interest from fast food national franchises. Sure. You've raised the point about a higher end restaurant. Now what they're looking for is they like to see a turn at lunch and they like to see a couple turns in the evening. I think that there's confidence. There's 2 turns in the evening with that big population and the shortage of restaurants. I think there's reservations at noon hour. They want to see activity on the sites. They want to see jobs, employees. I mean, Capital Auto Mall has a lot of employees, but that's where something like a medical dental building, a small office building, something that brings people to the area that are working during the day that need to go somewhere for lunch. And so we need to work in the discretionary use application. It refers to the city objective to have a sort of a complete community. We've got 51 developable acres that we can work hard to follow that and create as complete a community as we can. And there's lots of residential opportunities in the city. We feel there's fewer commercial, but at the point that we run out of commercial opportunities, then we would look to do residential combined. So we're excited about the opportunities there. We've had very good feedback, and this is a milestone event alongside opening up Argyle Street to security, to attracting these tenants. When they see buildings going up, it's going to be.
Yeah, I believe that Argyle Street, and through you, Mr. Mayor, said, I think Argyle Street was one of the biggest openings in the latest history for Regina as a road, a brand new road. And I think it's just opened the door. Now, Argyle Street, what about north? The dentist doctor thing, you were sort of talking north of Rochdale?
Yes.
As opposed to this particular. So what about the roadway taking Argyle Street and cutting around to Big Bear? Is that going to be finished and opened shortly, or to help? And that would again help your retail in this particular location.
This is part of our servicing agreement undertakings. We agreed to extend Argyle Street to Rochdale Boulevard as the first phase, and we've now, within a month, we will have Argyle Street extended further north to the Brightwater site that's under construction. Last fall, we were able to get one lift of pavement done on Big Bear, connecting from Vanstone to Argyle. Unfortunately, the weather turned before we got the second lift on. So by the end of May, we should have Big Bear opened up, and then residents in Lake Ridge and Twin Lakes will then have a couple different routes back to their residences.
Thanks. Perfect. That's all I wanted to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Flegel. Are there questions of the delegation? Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery, and we'll look at the capital crossing application for a shopping center. Councilor Donald.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please?
Second, please, Councilor Flagel.
Thanks very much. So the address here is 3701 and 3801 Rochdale Boulevard, and I think you heard from the delegation a lot about what I want to describe to you, but I'll step back first. If you are a North End person, you will understand that as early or recent as about 2 years ago, the commercial vacancy rate along this area was 0.5%. In other words, there was no vacancy. And so when Superstore came in and they put, if you'll recall, they put a number of stores on that site, those were all immediately occupied and so on. But our population continues to grow along there, and we are underserviced commercially. So from a planning perspective, from a planning commission perspective, we were very pleased to see these folks come through. From someone who visits his community associations that identified this as a growth area, I have nothing but hands up and smiles on their face because they wish to have that opportunity. And it's really important to note what a change Argyle Street has made in terms of traffic flow, in terms of safety, but in terms of which areas these new businesses can service. In other words, it can come from the south as well as from the west and the north a little bit. So the number of parking stalls is significant. The possibility of a number of stores here and what it can do for service is significant. And you'll note that we both, Councilor Flagg and I both asked about the connection between the existing shopping center, large box, a number of little services, bank, and so on. I think that would be very important and hope that that can happen. See nothing but positive here. Seek concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councilor Donald. Councilor Flagel.
Thanks. And I want to thank all of council for getting the Argyle Street roadway open, because it was all of us that made that decision to bring it forward with a bit of push from some good people like Mr. Scraper and his group. But through you, Mr. Mayor, I think what slowed the whole process of this down, this was sort of in front of us a couple of years ago. If we look at economic turndown, things have changed in the city in the last 1 to 3 years. We look at the poor weather, as Mr. Scraper talked about. We had some roadways that could have been open, but we got a little snow in early October, and it just kind of killed everybody's paving jobs. And then we had some delays in the pipeline, which also caused some issues in the lands, et cetera, dealing with SmartSet. And also there's some other intricacies, and we have a co-op gas bar that's eventually going to be showing up in Brightwater, which is that memory care, if everybody remembers that, in having another facility that will allow people to live a better life. So these are the types of things, and it's just not a retail slam of fast food into you area. It's going to be an area where people are going to develop, and more housing will come eventually, and it will sustain the people that are in the north. And I mean, if you look at the East End and Harbor Landing, there's tons of fast food and tons of restaurants and like 14 gyms right around the Victoria Square Mall or thereabouts. And all we're trying to do, Mr. Scraper, is get one more up in the north, and I think we can sustain that. So if it ends up being that it has to be on the other side of Rochdale, so be it. But it's nothing but good news for the north, and we'll continue to push to get more up there, and with help from our developer friends. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Flagel. Other speakers to the report? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Our next delegation, Sylvie Gaudreau and Jenny Cote. This is the proposed daycare center. If you could come forward and state your name, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation as well, and there may be questions afterwards.
Okay. Thank you very much for having us tonight. Sylvie sends her regrets. She's sick at the moment, so she couldn't come tonight. So my name is Jenny Cote, and I'm the president of the Centre Éducatif Garde Amie. You may know it's a French daycare, and it's adjoined with École Monseigneur de Laval Primary School. And I have Amanda Jasek Flamand, who's one of the board members as well. Okay. So the daycare is run as a non-for-profit co-op. And in October 2017, all the members of the co-op voted to purchase a house located at 2 Sturgeon Crescent to open a second French daycare. This was necessary due to the space constraints and our existing location and all the demand for the daycare placements. So we have already 71 spots in our daycare, spaces in our daycare, but the demand is really high. Our wait list is like 100 families, so we would need more room. So Amanda and I are here to answer all your concern or questions.
Good. Thank you very much. Any questions of the delegation? I think you made yourself very clear, and the report's very clear as well. Thank you very much. You can return to the gallery, and we'll look at report 27, which is a discretionary use application for a daycare center on Turgeon Crescent. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. If I could have a second, I'll speak to this.
Seconder, please, for that. Councillor Brashani.
Thanks. So this is the first time we've had a daycare center before us that's residential since there was changes in terms of how this laid out. So part of the discussion actually at Planning Commission was we want to make sure that it came back to here and that we had a chance to discuss this. A unique situation, and I'll just describe it a little bit from what I have heard and what I understand. And that is that there already is an existing daycare across the street. And so the people who would be using this daycare already understand where to park, already understand that notion there. But also to where this house is, in terms of the way the street aligns, there is room for a number of cars to be able to stop at the usual morning and afternoon pickup drop-off times, so that there is a little bit more flexibility than, say, compared to some other residential areas. The whole notion of how the house is operating falls under provincial jurisdiction. That is not our job. Our job is about the land use and so on. So there were questions, but there was probably more answers that we thought that this was definitely something worthwhile to bring to council and to support. Interesting about daycare, and so the nice lady that was here before talked about demand and so on. And I would suggest to you, and this is not part of the discussion that came out of Planning Commission, but the notion of house and daycare in areas may be something that we'll see more of. This is the first. And so I'm certainly looking for your direction as to what to take back to Planning Commission as well. But certainly on this case, this one that's here, we saw this as being a benefit, and we would seek your concurrence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other speakers to the report? It's a great addition to the community. No other speakers? Oh. Councillor Massanelli, the floor is yours.
I think Councillor O'Donnell may have already answered my question when he referenced provincial jurisdiction. So this daycare is in a residential area. Will it be under residential tax rate, or will it be under commercial?
Ms. Harlock?
Your Worship, it'll be tax commercial.
And the operators were aware of that, putting the...
Ms. Harlock?
So to me that makes the business case sound, and that's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Massanelli. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to welcome you to Ward 1. I think that this house is in a perfect spot because it's right across from the other one. It's on a corner lot, which makes it easy to have parking right by the door. There were a lot of questions from people in the community, and I think that they met with them and they answered all of their questions. And so there is no pushback from any members of the community that I know about. I think all their questions are being taken care of by the way it's being built.
Thank you, Councillor Young. So I say it's a great addition to the community. Councillor O'Donnell, do you want to close debate? Okay. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Move on to delegations, communication, motions. This relates to solar panels motion coming before us. First delegation is Catherine Gibson. Ms. Gibson, if you could identify yourself for the record, who you represent. You have 5 minutes for your presentation.
Good evening, Your Worship and councillors. My name is Elaine Grass, and I am presenting on behalf of Catherine Gibson. My name is Catherine Gibson, and I appreciate the opportunity, albeit in absentia, to speak in favor of the motion to explore the opportunities for placing solar panels on the rooftops of buildings belonging to the City of Regina. The timing could not be better. In these past few months, a group of Regina and area homeowners have taken their interest in solar energy to an all-new level, that of forming Wascana Solar Cooperative. Before commenting on the current situation, I want to acknowledge the past contributions of the many that pioneered a suitable for Saskatchewan format of alternative and renewable energy, and who took the financial risk when the cost of panels was sky high. I also want to express gratitude for the lessons learned from the Solar Tour team through their organized visits by bus to various installations in Regina and area. As of today, I believe that the body of knowledge shared by Saskatoon Solar Co-op, with its emphasis on large-scale rooftop installations, and Wascana Solar Co-op, with its two-pronged approach, 1, small-scale residential, and 2, large-scale commercial installations, is such that the city administration will need to look no further than our own province to develop their recommendations on this proposal. For the immediate future, I look forward to seeing a virtual sea of rooftop panels on city buildings, bringing in enough financial resources to lower my taxes, and in addition, bringing about an improvement in the health of the environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Other questions of the delegation? Oh, you're very clear in your intent. Thank you very much for that. Next delegation is Kelly Husak. If you could identify yourself for the record as well, and if you represent, you as well have 5 minutes for your presentation.
My name is Kelly Husak, and I represent the Regina Blue Dot Movement. Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak here today on behalf of the Regina Blue Dot Movement. You may remember our group from just over a year ago when this council voted unanimously to pass a municipal declaration for the right to a healthy environment. I am happy to report that we have been making progress at a national level, working to encourage our federal government to act on the proposed changes to the Canadian Environmental Protections Act. These proposed changes include the right to a healthy environment in the recommendations and is reflected in the title, Healthy Environment, Healthy Canadians, Healthy Economy. This awareness and use of such positive language is a result of the action taken by municipalities like yourself, those that have set an example for what is in the best interest of their citizens by acting on issues of the environment. One does not have to look far to see the potential for renewable energy and the opportunities it creates for tackling the major crises we face today as a society. All around the world, countries and cities are moving forward on developing alternative energy solutions because their leaders recognize the imminent threat that climate change poses to the health of the environment. By investigating into low-carbon options for energy sourcing, the City of Regina is promoting numerous priorities that it has identified for itself, including the promotion of conservation, stewardship, and environmental sustainability. In fact, I believe the most important aspect of this motion is that it provides leadership on the climate action within the province of Saskatchewan. Transitioning to a low-carbon future will take innovation, leadership, and most importantly, action. This action needs to be shared by all levels of government, from federal to provincial to the individual. The issue of climate change is bigger than any one city, but motions such as the one that will be in front of you today help to shape the norms and values of everyday people and guide them to the positive action that our planet needs. Regina has an opportunity to continue to lead on issues of the environment and climate, and as municipal leaders, we require you to make tangible action in the best interests of the community. I am happy and proud to see this investigation into renewable energy projects taking shape here in the City of Regina. I hope you will all support it as well.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Other questions of the delegation? Once again, very clear in your ideas. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
The next delegation is Josh Campbell and Susan Burley. Just Susan Burley.
Yeah, sorry, Josh Campbell wasn't able to be here. But good evening. Mayor, members of council. We are writing in support of Councillor Mike O'Donnell's recommendation from the March 26th meeting that city administration investigate the potential of installing solar panels on city-owned property, that the administration investigate both cost savings and potential revenue from solar panel installations, and that they investigate whether there are partnerships available for the solar panel installations. We represent a group of residents from Regina and area that are interested in seeing growth in solar and renewable energy use in Regina. We're in the process of incorporating as the Wascana Solar Cooperative. Our mission is to sustainably build, invest in, own and operate solar power generation projects in Regina and across Saskatchewan through a cooperative community model, and to create a better understanding of solar power through education and advocacy. We will provide options for people interested in investing in solar energy, whether on their own property or in large-scale solar installations. We would be interested in working with the City of Regina on any potential solar joint ventures. As you may be aware, the Saskatchewan Environmental Society established the Saskatoon Solar Co-op, which entered into a joint project with the City of Saskatoon to produce electricity for the landfill gas generation station. There are many other models across Canada that represent partnerships between small power producers and the community. We would be interested in discussing our approach to solar installations with the City of Regina. We believe that reducing reliance on fossil fuels is an important goal for the city and its residents. In addition, solar energy can reduce the operating costs of city-run facilities, which benefits taxpayers. Please consider Councillor O'Donnell's proposal and the many benefits it will bring to the City of Regina. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Any questions of members of council? Well, you're very clear you as well. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So we'll move on to the motion before us here, which is on solar panels. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks very much. I appreciate the opportunity to address this, and I want to first thank all of the people that came tonight to support, but also the many people that have phoned and emailed and so on. Been invited to watch solar panels be installed, been invited to people's homes who have solar power and show how it operates and so on. So I actually have learned a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. So I think there's some possibilities here. One of the things, and depending on who you talk to, we're either the number 1 or number 3 place in Canada for the amount of sunlight that we would have on any given day throughout the year. And so we have an opportunity that I would suggest to you is untapped. 2, we have, and we oft refer to this, we have assets. Assets are our buildings.
The seconder for your motion.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Barsiani, sorry.
So we have assets, and we talk about buildings as assets all the time. Not every one of our buildings is suitable for this install. Some of the older styles or older buildings may not actually be able to support it. But we actually have an awful lot of new and newer buildings, and will in the future have more. So I think this is a possibility. One, to change the way we operate would be one way I would look at it. 2, you'll note that I said this from a financial point of view. 5 years ago or 10 years ago, I could have stood and said, this is a really smart, really good environmental thing to do, but the dollars and cents would have been that we were contributing and not necessarily making. Information that I keep getting says that maybe it has changed. It means that that installation now can be paid for over a relatively short period of time, and that there has the ability to either offset our cost of energy, or maybe we can actually create revenue. And so I'd like to invite our administration to pursue those things. And obviously SaskPower is a key component to this. It basically, from my point of view, is an invitation to look at the City of Regina as a partner, look at the city as a large-scale partner, because they have quotas that they must meet in terms of alternate energy, and I think we're right here, and we could solve many of those things. So I seek your support and look forward to some really healthy discussion in the future on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. We do have some speakers. Councillor Murray.
Thank you very much. Through your worship, I just had a question for administration. Because it's not expressly written in the motion, one thought that I keep having reading the motion is around our fleet and electrifying portions of our fleet where it would be viable, utilizing said solar panels on our facilities to charge them. I'm wondering if that would be included in the report that you would be bringing to us if the motion passes tonight.
Mr. Lacey.
Through you, Your Worship, I guess specifically with respect to that request, that's certainly something we could look at as part of the report. With respect to energy vehicles and how that might be tapped in, it was not until you've raised the issue. I think something that we were considering within the scope. But if there is a desire for us to consider that, that's certainly something that we can look at including in the scope of the project.
Okay. Well, with that, maybe after some discussion, I might do an amendment to include that as part of the.
You have one time to speak, Councillor.
Okay.
So
well, I'll add a fifth. Then, well, would be a fifth that fleet electrification, where viable, is also included in the report, utilizing solar panels to charge.
Okay.
No, I think he's talking about plugging them in, right?
That would be a new number 4.
Okay.
New number 4. Could you repeat the motion?
That fleet electrification, where viable, is included in the report, utilizing solar panels to charge, if that makes sense.
And that should be above the report back to City Council in December 2019. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Young? Councillor Young has moved that. You want to speak further on the amendment?
That's it.
Okay, to the amendment. Any speakers to the amendment? Just raise your hand so I'll keep the same queue as on the main motion. Councillor Young, on the amendment?
Research on this, and you may come up with some other things that we haven't thought about adding to this. And so I would leave it up to you to bring back anything you think might be amenable to the idea of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Other speakers to the amendment? You just raise your hand. Councillor Hawkins.
Just very briefly, I hope administration understands fleet in the broadest sense to include city buses as well as other city vehicles and perhaps even police vehicles as well.
Thank you. Councillor Bershani.
Thank you, Your Worship. If I can just add on to that, in regards to also adding some of the solar lighting onto some of the street lamps, some of them in our parks, which is someone had called me and asked if we were looking at that. So would that be kind of in this whole some street lighting where we can do, would that just be a synopsis of just bringing back a report where we see benefits, where it could work? With that?
We should actually be speaking to the amendment only, which is not, we're not actually getting to the wish list of things you want to see. So I'm not saying it's wrong, Councillor Bershani, and I should have caught others with us. The amendment is for solar power for vehicles. So I'd like to ask for just whether you support that. We can get to some other amendments later on, but I want to be not throwing this into wish list right now. So if you speak to that motion, the amendment.
Okay.
Only to number 4.
Okay. Right. So speaking to number 4, but are we going to just continue adding on? That's
well, we can, but for the motion right now, it's only Councillor Murray's motion, which is only for that.
Until...
Okay. Other speakers to the amendment?
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Oh, Mr. City Manager.
I just wanted to add to your comment, and maybe it's to Councillor Young's, is that obviously this is simply about solar power and options around solar power. But I think it's important, between SAS Power and the city, we had a recent meeting of our executive teams, and we're looking for opportunities to create partnerships, look for opportunities to look at exactly what's coming up and through some of the ideas. So whether it's solar power for park lighting, whether there's other examples, we'll be looking at those on an ongoing basis with SAS Power. So fully supportive of focusing on the motion before you this evening.
Thank you for that. So maybe we could focus on the amendment, and then the other issues I think the City Manager said will be looked at with SAS Power. If you can do that. So other speakers on the amendment by Councillor Murray. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Murray, you have about 2 minutes left on your discussion on the main motion. Do you want to use that? Okay. Move on to Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. I guess a comment and then a question. I just want to start by thanking Councillor O'Donnell for bringing this forward. I think it is long overdue, and I'm glad we're taking this on. When I was at SUMA, I was really blown away by what small communities are doing. I had a chance to see a panel of northern and southern Saskatchewan communities that were just taking this initiative on, and they made it look so easy, from wind-powered rinks to solar panels on civic buildings. And I was really struck by the ease at which they made this whole process look. And then I had asked, what's the biggest challenge? And in unison, all three speakers said, SAS Power is the biggest obstacle to advancing solar energy. And I was quite struck by that. So what I'm encouraged with is that communities in Saskatchewan are actually taking the lead. And I think we're in a position to hold both the government and SAS Power to account and hold them as honest brokers of this promise to go down the renewable path. So I'm glad that we're seeing Saskatchewan, major cities like Saskatoon and Regina, pushing this ahead. A question for administration in terms of the reading. Item 3 here talks about partnerships, and today we heard from both the Blue Dot as well as community co-ops. Would that be included in the list of potential conversations and partnerships that we could forge, not just with SAS Power, but with these small community-based organizations that are, again, taking the lead?
Mr. Lacey.
Through you, Your Worship, we certainly take the language with respect to exploring the possibility of partnerships beyond SAS Power.
Great, thank you. I worry about adding things on. I just have a question here. I know we probably all have a shopping list of concerns. There seems to be a growing trend in the United States of requiring large open spaces like parking lots, as well as large buildings like box stores. We saw a delegation today. This is all potentially underutilized solar space. What's within the scope of our authority and power to mandate private buildings through zoning or land use to require them to have solar panels and other renewable energy sources on their structure?
So we are getting off topic a bit, because you're talking about the private sector versus the City of Regina.
I just want to see what the scope of authority is, please.
Order. I'll let you answer one question, but I don't want to pursue the lines with the city facilities being not private sector.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Ms. Howlack.
Your Worship, we do have the building bylaw, so if there was requirements, then we could look at that.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you for that. Councillor Massanelli, you're next.
Just wanted to mention that I'm in favor of this motion. I think it's a great opportunity, and I think it's a great opportunity not just for renovating buildings, but also, as Councillor Bresciani was pointing out, some of the one-offs we have, such as single street lights and parks. A lot of work saved if we can go off the grid with those applications. So just wanted to say that I think this is a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor Massanelli. Other speakers to the motion? Councillor Massanelli, can you take the chair, please? So, Deputy Mayor, thank you very much. I have a couple of comments and some questions. First of all, I want to thank Councillor O'Donnell for raising this issue. It's a great motion, and I fully support it. But I have some questions related to some of the wording and the intent. And it may be that I'm I will say I have a shallow end of knowledge in terms of solar power and how it's done, but I have some questions related to it's sprinkled throughout here in point 1 and 2 speaks of the generation of revenue to the city of Regina. And I raise a question because part of the constraints that Councillor Stevens mentioned earlier is that South Power can be an impediment. The only entity that can sell power is South Power. And we're talking about a source of revenue for the city. Now, I'm wondering to the mover, to Councillor O'Donnell, are we speaking of us selling our surplus electrical needs that are maybe less because we have solar power? Or are we talking about foregone expenditures, and we will not have to spend more for solar or electrical power because we're getting solar supply and we can use that money for something else? It's not clear to me what exactly the intent is here.
Thank you. My intent in writing it was that current legislation obviously is such that SAS Power is the only control when it comes to revenue or revenue generation. My intent here was that that's current, and so by including that in the motion, I was simply looking if legislation changes and that we have the ability to sell excess power, should we be generating it? I just didn't want that lost. That's all.
That is with respect to Big If, and I don't know if SAS Power will give up the monopoly because that's how they fund everything they do. So as long as we understand that going in, that we cannot use this as of right now, a source of additional revenue to offset anything, as long as we're clear, I'll agree with the motion. To me, that's very important that we not raise expectations that somehow we can do this. My understanding is that the cost of a payback for solar panel installation is about 8 to 10 years, which others I've talked to said that that's the case. So we know going in, once again, there is a cost, which is fine, for the installation, but the return on investment will be later, and that's fine as well. It is within the realm of a good business case, but it wasn't that way 10 years ago. So I will support that as long as we understand, again, about the revenue generation, Mr. Deputy Mayor, that we have to be cautious on that. That doesn't happen unless the province consciously and willfully says we'll open up the market to private sector or other levels of government generating and offsetting their own electricity for their own benefit, which I wish they would, but I don't think they'll do that. So, but I do support the motion. Thank you. Councillor O'Donnell, do you want to close debate? Okay. On that note, no other speakers. I'll call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Next report is report CM 18-7, Public Safety and Traffic Relay. This is the Ring Road at Winnipeg Street and McDonald Street. Councillor Messon, I'm going to ask you to take the chair once again. I'm going to introduce the report. Deputy Mayor, I move concurrence in the public safety and traffic delay grade rail crossings on the Ring Road between Winnipeg Street and McDonald Street. If I have a second for that, please. Before I have my comments, I ask the administration to provide background to this report. This is on the motion that was passed last month by council, and I would ask the administration to provide a comment. Then I'll begin the discussion.
Through you. This administration was looking at this, and we are supportive of it. The Transportation Master Plan is a 25-year plan, and it does identify that a study be done to look at the railways locations and separations at this location and other locations throughout the city. So that was 8 to 16 years out. However, due to the funding that's coming with the federal government and their bigger investment in grants, this is a timely thing to look at this point in time, because from a financial perspective, this isn't something that's SAF funded. And so to be able to look at the study, do the background work, and then to potentially have access to the federal funds should a solution be implemented in the future is very beneficial. The The study will look at all of the options that are available over, under, and rail relocation. Since the mayor brought this motion forward, CN and CP have contacted the city and are supportive to have discussions regarding the rails at this location and to look at rail relocation. The cost of the study, it is a large order of magnitude. We don't anticipate that we would go over the 500,000. However, what we want to do is ensure that we have expedited the process as quickly as possible, because we do need some answers with respect to this study as soon as possible, just due to some other projects. So we're thinking it would come in more under, around the 300,000. But in order to also look at ensuring that our work program is continuing, that our 2018 work plan and 2019 plan, we would look at hiring some additional staff to help us manage this project and manage some of the other work that we need to do, so that none of our work plans that all of our work plans maintain on track. So I can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you for that, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I want to make a slight amendment to recommendation number 1. In further discussion with the administration, and in particular Ms. Harlock and the city manager, that 300,000 would be allocated from the general fund reserve, with the notion that 200,000 may come forward as required. And the reason I wanted to make this change is that 500,000 is not the number the administration said we just heard. So to be more clear, the report would initially be 300,000 to be allocated through the general fund reserve, with an additional $200,000 at the discretion of the city manager should this study require it. That'd be my amendment. That way we're more clear on the intent of the motion and the expenditure. That it is not going to be, we don't expect it to be 500,000, we expect it to be more in the range of 300. If by some chance there is something that happens there, it will be. At the discretion of the state manager, he will be allowed to do that.
I'll second it.
I have just a vote on that. I think I've explained why that is the case.
Any speakers to the amendment? I see no speakers to the amendment. I guess we should vote on the amendment. All in favor? So passed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just very quickly, I appreciate members of council's support on this, and knowing that this is an important element with respect to safety and with the public moving around our city and through the corridor of the Ring Road. As was mentioned, CN and CP have both reached out to say they want to have a conversation with respect to rail relocation. It would appear that may be the cheapest of the options, the less invasive with respect to other projects like the McDonald Street overpass, which is critical to be done very quickly. And also, we would not be investing in new infrastructure in the sense we would have to repair things on the Ring Road as well. We do have the right-of-way already that's been secured, and so work has been done in that regard. I've spoken several times with Minister Goodale, who's very supportive of the project and understands the need for this. And that is not a guarantee, but it certainly is open part of the discussion that he would want to be involved financially with us. We may be able to, I hope, tap into the transit infrastructure allocation if we use part of this as a express route for transit, which is another element and dimension of funding as well. So I'd ask members of council to please support the motion. Have a start. We'll get it back, as this report says, by the second quarter of 2019, and we can have a discussion as to how that works. But we are starting off on a good foot. We're going to talk about what are the options that's available, what is the cost of those options, and with that discussion we will see is the relocation of the line a possibility before we come back with the report. I suspect, I'm hoping that will be the best one to go forward. If not, then what are the designs to look at an underpass or overpass? And at that point, council can say, yeah, you're nay to it. But certainly having that information to develop the project as it's designed to be is the first step in the process. So I'd ask members of council to vote in concurrence. Thank you.
I see Councillor Flegel.
Me? Did you say? Okay. Sorry. Couldn't hear you. Sorry. I had to say it. Thanks. And yeah, this is great news, and I think it's long overdue, as most of the residents in the North End know that. And I think actually CNCP are probably getting tired of hearing from us too. So I'm glad to hear that they're open to some discussion. Funding, would this, and maybe the mayor would know this, would this fit into similar funding like we've had from the ITC Center and the Communiplex, all the different things that the provincial and federal government have done, a third, and a third? Would this kind of work in that you know of or heard?
So, Deputy Mayor, I can give a general comment to this one because I think part of the discussion is where federally does the money come from. But the funds you speak of on the Build Canada Fund are closed. That under the Conservative government, that's now, of course, gone. Right. There are new sources of revenue. One of them would be transit. Could be a possibility of transit, although that's more of a slim possibility. But there are infrastructure monies available that would be tripartite in funding, federal, provincial, and city.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's always nice to know that there is a possibility of all the different levels. And it might even be prudent of CNCP to pony up a bit too, because it's going to enhance and make their world a lot easier than having to deal with us all the time. You mentioned McDonald Street. It's actually Winnipeg, getting the new overpass. But will this, I know that there were supposedly some drawings and stuff being put together, I thought in Q3 or Q4 of 18, and design about the Winnipeg Street overpass. Is this going to change that? Because we're looking at, as the mayor said, Q2 of 19 to bring this report back. Is there a way to have both work together, or can we shift Q2 to sooner to help out? I know that I've talked to Ms. Gasmo, and I think she said before the end of this year they were looking at starting design. So where does that put this?
Ms. Ehrlich?
Through you. Yes, that's right. We are going forward with the design, so they're going to work in tandem together. So we'll proceed with some of the design work for the Winnipeg Street Bridge at the same time, and hopefully we'll get some preliminary results. It may end up that some of the design work that we do for the Winnipeg Street might need to be tweaked depending on the final decision for the rail relocation, but administration feels that we'll be able to handle both those projects.
Partly through you, Deputy Mayor, if we go and spend all the money to design what we could have today or put there today, and we decide to do a full overpass, we've just spent a lot of money on a design that's not going to happen, and then we have to go back. And all I'm trying to do is there a way to speed up this motion to get into the end of 18 as opposed, I don't know. I'm just asking the question. I'm just trying to not have us go backward and design and everything and spend the time and resources and money and then go, we're not going to do that. We're going to go with this instead, and we've just spent $1 million or whatever the number is. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Ms. Ehrlich?
Through Mr. Chairman. We wouldn't be able to finish the feasibility study by the end of the year.
Okay.
It is a risk, and we've identified that. But as I said, we'll be working closely with both the design for the Winnipeg Street and with the consultants to minimize any rework that we may have to do.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all I have. Thank you. I'll also be supportive.
Councillor Berchian.
Thank you. Through the chair. So I just have a question. So when was this bridge, we have the 25-year transportation master plan. So when was this bridge due to, on the plans to be done?
Through Mr. Chairman. So it was identified in the TMP for approximately 8 to 16 years, but the TMP is a living document that we review, and depending on different situations, we can bring projects forward through the process.
Perfect. Thank you for that. And just another question. So because we are moving this one forward 8 years, or so obviously there's going to be some projects then that maybe have been planned that may not be able to go ahead. Would that be accurate?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. At this point, we're anticipating with hiring the additional staff that the current work plan that's in place will be not jeopardized in any way. There would be some decisions moving forward with respect to the decision that council might make with respect to any options that you want to choose, and we would look at that in our work plan at that point in time to see what balance we would need to make to bring all those projects to fruition.
Okay, thank you for that. Through the chair, so just to be clear, so through this study and the report that's going to come back to council will be part of that to say that if we move this one forward, these other ones will not be able to be done, or this is kind of the plan of how we're moving it forward, and these ones cannot be done at this time because we're moving this one forward. Is that accurate?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, that's right. Once we know exactly what the option is, then we'd have a better idea about how our work plans would be going forward, and we would balance the work with respect to the needs with what's outlined in the TMP going forward.
And then that would be in this report as well.
That's correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
I see no other questions, but I do have a few myself. Great place. No, not the way it works.
Councilor Massanelli.
Through the chair, I guess I do have one question. In light of the Regina bypass being worked on and completed, traffic flows throughout the city are going to shift, I would imagine, somewhat dramatically. I note there's 65,000 cars on that stretch of road a day in the statistics given. Is there any thought that the change of traffic flows caused by the bypass might change the need for this to be done or have any offset? If maybe this should be done after we're more settled into the bypass?
Ms. Harlan?
Through your worship, I might take this to Mr. Brown, but I'll start. I believe when we did the transportation master plan, the bypass was in the works, and that was under consideration with the traffic modeling, but I'll just ask Mr. Brown to expand.
Mr. Brown?
Through you, Mr. Worship, yes, we would actually look at in terms of what traffic impacts forecast would be in the future with respect to the impact of the bypass. So it is a consideration that we'd want to understand as part of the outcomes of the study.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other speakers to the report? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Community and Protective Services Committee, Saskatchewan Rough Riders Transit Service Agreement Amendment. Councillor Flagel.
Perfect. There. Thank you. I rise in support of CR 18-28, and this is a contract between Saskatchewan Rough Rider Transit Service Agreement, and it's an amendment. And basically, they're listening to what the riders and the people have said, and last year they added, it was, I think, 310 hours to transit to get people to and from the Rough Rider football games in the stadium. And they had originally were only at 155 hours, and midstream went to 310, and now they're saying that they'd like to go to 350. Again, it's a rider cost. Everything is looked after. We're just going to provide more service so that we can get the people to and from the games a lot quicker. And the administration, kind of on the fly, made those decisions last year. Now we're just putting this on pen to paper so that it's more of a legal entity, and everybody knows what's going on. So we had a good discussion about this at Community and Protective, because we wanted to make sure that the fans were experiencing a game and then being able to get in and out of the facilities a little bit quicker. And through this and adding more and adding buses and different volunteers that help direct people traffic to different signs, it's made it a lot better. And I think the progress over the next year will also give us this. But if we have to alter it again, we have the administration being able to do that. So if I can find a seconder for this.
Seconder, please. Councillor Dowell.
And it's also going to allow us to expand on this to game to game to game. And if Mr. Onwright and his team need more, we've got a little bit more leeway up to 350, and they were averaging about 310 hours. So I move concurrence on this and hope for the support.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Are there other speakers to the report? Councillor O'Donnell?
Thanks very much. There is a change that's noted in here in terms of pickup locations. Could I ask the administration just to comment on that, please?
Mr. Onright.
Through your worship, I'll ask Mr. Bells to comment.
Mr. Bells.
Through you, Your Worship, for 2018, Norman View Mall no longer wants to be part of the program, one of our 5 locations. In seeking that and understanding that the Norman View Mall is not part of the program, we are moving our location to the warehouse district where the Sears outlet or Value Village is located.
Will that go into effect, Mr. Mayor, with the Eagles concert?
Through your worship, yes, it will start with the Eagles concert on May 17th.
And could I just ask about communication on that, please?
Through your worship, both the City of Regina and the Memorial Cup Committee will work at communicating that to our patrons. There will also be a needs-to-know document to all ticket holders of the Eagle concert of the change in location for the charter service of the transit.
And my last question, if I could, to Mr. Bells is, would it be fair for me to say that the clientele that came to the Rider game regularly on transit may have been different than the clientele that came to the concert for Guns N' Roses? Guns N' Roses. So, in other words, it was a wider scope is what I'm getting at. Could I have a comment on that?
Mr. Bells?
Through your worship, yes, intake for the Rider games was quite strong as well, but we saw our biggest crowd for the Guns N' Roses concert, and we also expect a fairly decent crowd for the Eagles concert that's coming up on May 17th.
Thanks to Mr. Bell's comment. I would suggest that prior to the opening of the new stadium, one of the real concerns was parking and transit. And so I think it would be a really good time to kind of say, well done. The numbers of people that were using the bus was, in my view, astronomical. And I tried it from different locales. People were happy, very happy. And so the numbers were significant. What I found interesting when I went to Guns N' Roses, I didn't see the same people I saw at the Rider game, but they came up to me and talked about riding transit. So somehow or other that communication is getting through. And so I applaud people on this route. I also applaud the Rough Riders for their willingness. We always use that word, let's partner. Well, they took ownership, as of what I would suggest, and put some cash on there, and again, are increasing that cash so that this could work. So honestly, I think this is brilliant, brilliant stuff. Now, if you just give me one aside, I'd like to ask Mr. Bells one more question. Now, I'm curious because Mr. Bells just traveled south, and he visited a wonderful, wonderful community called O'Donnell, Texas. And I wonder if he learned anything in O'Donnell, Texas that would help him with transit, just out of curiosity.
So I'll let it go because this isn't to do with the riders, though.
I knew you
would. The riders in the stadium.
I knew you would.
So I'll let you go once, and that's it.
Okay. O'Donnell, Texas, please.
Well, I'm not sure I like that name, but that's okay. That's fine. Mr. Bells.
Well, through your worship, I truly don't understand the question. I do know the population is less than 1,000.
There you go.
Home of Dan Blocker, Haas on the Bonanza, just so you know.
Oh, wow. Yes, you did. Councilor Bresciani, on that note, please raise the debate, please.
Enlighten yes. Okay, thank you. Through you, Your Worship. So just a question in regards to, and I want to say thank you as well, to Mr. Bells and the whole transit, because I know people, I've heard from residents, I've seen the lineups of people, but they appreciate being able to take the bus there and back. But one of the questions I would like to ask is, are we also ensuring that people with disability are also getting rides on the regular buses as well as paratransit? Does that happen as well for these events, rider games and concerts and stuff?
Mr. Onright.
Yes, they are. Paratransit customers can either take conventional. We've seen low ridership on conventional from our paratransit customers. They show their game day ticket and they get a free ride. We provide approximately 6 to 7 paratransit buses each game. They have a dedicated drop-off point for the customers. same location after the game, and again, they show their game day ticket, and the service is provided for free.
Perfect. Awesome. Again, I just want to say thank you for a job well done.
Thank you, Councilor Brashani. Other speakers to the report? Want to close debate? Okay.
Turn Gary
on one. Councilor Flagel,
Thank
close
you.
debate.
Thanks. I wanted to clarify just on one of Councillor O'Donnell's questions. What are the 5 locations today for pickup?
Mr. Bell.
Besides O'Donnell, Texas.
Yeah.
Mr. Bells.
Through your worship, for 2018, we will again have the Northgate, Vic Square, Southland Mall, and the downtown. And our 5th location will be the warehouse area, or district on 6th and Broad.
Okay, thanks. So if I could ask, is there a possibility to look at North Walmart, North Superstore? Because that Northgate Mall kind of takes over everything, but there's nothing now that Norman View is out. Is there any possibility of opening and maybe discussions with Walmart or Superstore to have a pickup done in game day there or in that general vicinity, Home Depot, I don't know, somewhere? Because it's a large population that go to the games. Plus, there are a ton of people that come in from outside the city that may want to just drive. They'll come. You watch coming down Pasco Street, and it's just a steady stream for like 2 hours. And maybe there's a possibility of those people connecting with a bus system out in that vicinity, and then busing it into the stadium, and then hence busing back out and then getting out of the city after. Possibility?
Mr. Bells?
Through your worship, when we heard that Norman View Mall was not going to participate in the program this year, we looked at various options in the north and the west area of the city, including Westera, RCMP, the locations you're talking about on Rochdale, the Turvey Center. None of them fit the proper footprint for parking that we needed, and at the same time, the length that it would take to go to and from Mosaic. So the best location that we found with the partnership of the warehouse district was that location.
Okay, well, I guess I just have to ask this. You've taken a northwest location, got rid of it, and put it more downtown, and it's going to serve which purpose downtown? Because the residential area of the warehouse district is like 0 on a Sunday, and yet in the northwest and north central west, or wherever you want to call it, there's like 80,000 people.
I think they tried to find a location, and they couldn't do it, but Mr. Onwright.
Yeah. Just want to get clarification on how this all...
Mr. Onwright?
Through your worship. So as Mr. Bells has indicated, when we were notified that Norman View was not interested in continuing, the locations Mr. Bell has commented on, we had discussions with them. Those locations were not interested in having that service set up in their mall space.
Okay.
As an example, Westera was another. Not that moving forward, there may be some opportunities that come up. Understanding that parking for the people that are going to take transit is essential to making this successful. So that's a bit of a challenge when we're looking at opportunities.
Okay, well, as long as we continue to maybe talk to these people again as time goes on, because I think there'll be a missed opportunity with 80,000 people in this quadrant that aren't going to have the bus service unless they go to Northgate Mall. So just a comment. Thanks.
Thank you,
Still
Councillor.
support the whole motion.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. You have closed the debate, so I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next report as well from Community Protective Services on the renewal of the Toscata Alley Litter Collection Agreement. Councillor Flagel.
Thanks, and rise in support again of CR 18-29, and you're right, the Toscata Alley Litter Collection Agreement. This is a long-standing agreement with a group of people that go around and do collections that are in generally North Central. Seems to be the main thrust for these people. And this agreement, commencing January 1st, 2018, and terminating December 31st, 2019. And we leave it up to the city solicitor to put the proper documents together. These guys have done some great work over the years, And they generally help out on a per call basis, and they go out and they do things for everyone. They'll help out. They're good in the community. They're good for the community. And we fully support these guys, and they're doing a great job. And if there's any way we can help to expand it, we'll do so, I think.
A seconder for the motion. Councillor Murray, a discussion on the report. Pretty straightforward. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And we'll move on to Executive Committee reports. The Civic Addressing Service in the Arm of Sherwood. Councillor Massanelli.
Hi. CR 18-30. Basically, this is a agreement entered into with the RM of Sherwood to generate addresses for their area. It's cost recovery, and it's a good regional cooperation.
Thank you. So I have a second for that report, please. Councillor Young. Councillor Massanelli, you want to continue? Okay, other speakers to the report? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Report 31, Buffalo Pond Water Treatment Plant, proposed project funding. Councillor Massanelli.
Talked about the upgrades to the electrical in the Buffalo Pond Water Treatment Center. Of course, it's aged infrastructure. We've undergone approval to start to upgrade those electrical deficiencies, and this is to apply under the Building Canada Fund for some money, remuneration through the Canadian government.
Good. Thank you for that. A seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Bresciani, sorry. Discussion on the report. Councillor O'Donnell.
Where are we at with the City of Moose Jaw on this? This is a joint submission, so if I could get an update, please.
Mr. Kyles?
Through you, Your Worship.
Mr. Lacey.
Sorry, through you, Your Worship. The City of Moose Jaw considered this at their executive committee on April 23rd. It'll be going to their City Council on May 14th, and they are supportive of approving this application.
Thanks very much. Could I just ask for a quick summary from administration as to the benefits of this financially? What does it mean long-term is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Mr. Lacey.
So through you, Your Worship, the electrical capital upgrade project had three components to it. There's kind of one outstanding component that this application would relate to. The value of that component is $28.1 million. If the Buffalo Pond Water Treatment Corporation is not successful in this application, they would be required to fund 100% of that project. If they are successful, 100% successful in their application, they would only be required to fund their 33.3% portion of the project. The other two levels of government would fund the other 2/3, which would mean the amount that they would fund would only be $9.4 million, which would reduce their requirement by close to $19 million.
Thanks. I appreciate that summary. This is a huge financial benefit to our utility. It means that there are less expenditures at this point in time that we could use for other upgrades in the future. I applaud the folks involved here for bringing this forward. Thank you.
Any other questions on the report? It's also critical for a backup system on our electrical system. If we have a failure, we'll have another big problem. So it's critical this to be done as soon as possible. Call the question on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Report 32, Citizen Appointment to the Development Appeals Board. Councillor Massanelli.
Okay. That Amber Smale be appointed to the Development Appeals Board for a term effective May 1st, 2018 to December 31st, 2020, or until a successor is appointed.
Have a second, please. Councillor Fundura. Discussion on the report. All in favor? Opposed? It's carried. And the Airport Authority Board of Directors 2018 appointments. Councillor Massanelli.
That Sean McEachran be nominated to the Regina Airport Authority Incorporated Board of Directors for a term of office effective May 1st, 2018 to April 30th, 2021.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Fundura again. Discussion on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Last report in this section is Economic Development Regina, the 2017 annual report and appointments. Councillor Massanelli.
Okay, that the Executive Director, Financial and Corporate Services, as the city's proxy, be authorized to exercise the city's voting rights in Economic Development Regina and approve the following at the annual general meeting on May 1st, 2018. A, to receive the audited financial statements for the 2017 operating year, to receive the 2017 annual report, receive the 2018 business plan, receive the 2018 operating budget, and appoint an auditor selected by the City of Regina through the request for proposal process as the auditor of EDR for 2018 pursuant to Section 149 of the Non-Profit Corporations Act, and that the following directors be appointed to the EDR Board of Directors: Mr. Ryan Ruzada, Mr. Eric Dillon, Ms. Tina Svidal.
Seconder for that motion, please. Councillor Young. Discussion on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We'll go to Finance and Administration, the Microsoft Office. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. This is a recommendation of the Finance and Administration Committee that the Director of IT Services be delegated the authority to negotiate, finalize, and approve the city entering into a new agreement or amending the existing agreement with Microsoft Corporation for the Office 365 subscription service for up to 5 years, and that the city clerk be authorized to execute the necessary agreements on behalf of the city upon review and approval of the city solicitor. Just a little bit of background here. The city entered into an agreement with Microsoft Corporation in 2013. That agreement is about to expire. GroupWise is no longer able to offer a scalable email and collaboration suite of products to meet the demands of city departments. So that means that the city is going to have to go into a procurement mode. The traditional procurement mode would have the vendor, that would be the computer company, vendor sell a license and provide an application that would be installed on city-owned hardware. So it's city-owned hardware, and then the city would pay an annual maintenance fee. Now, in addition, there are other models where vendors provide access to applications by way of subscription. So the city doesn't own, it subscribes to the service, and the service is not hosted on the city's servers, but on vendor-owned hardware. To make it short, the bylaws require that City Council approve the option of the city following this new method of providing these services. That is, moving beyond cases where we would own the service to cases where we would enter into a subscription agreement. That's what's behind us. I believe, Your Worship, that if the administration can clarify that any further, I would welcome it. But that's the gist of what's being asked for here.
Before we do that, I'm going to ask for a seconder for the motion. Councillor Stevens. To the administration, any comments on this? Mr. Lacey?
Through you, Your Worship, maybe just make a couple of additional comments. So 5 years ago, the city moved to what is called a software as a service. So essentially what we do is we purchase over the net Office 365 products. So it'd be what you'd be familiar with, Excel, Word, etc. Historically, those type of products would have been, you would have licensed them, you would have owned that asset, you would have continually have gone through maintenance agreement. There's a bylaw on the books currently whereby as long as we continue to have that asset and maintain it, as long as we have an exit clause, we can continuously renew that annual maintenance agreement. Because this is a service agreement and because we're at the 5-year mark and the bylaw does not contemplate these type of agreements, these new types of agreements in software, we are before council simply because we've hit the 5-year mark and we require council approval if we are to renew for an additional 5 years. And so what we're recommending is an additional 5-year renewal with the ability to have an appropriate exit clause should we choose to do so within up to those 5 years.
Okay, that's good. Councillor Hawkins, are you okay? Yeah. No comments? Discussion on this report. Councillor Donald.
Thanks. I appreciate both parties giving me an explanation of what this involves. My question is something I keep hearing about in the media all the time, and it's about security. So could I just have a comment back about, does this change security, or should I feel fine, or data, or I don't even know all the words anymore. So.
Mr. Lacey.
Thank you for the question. And through you, Your Worship, I will turn that question over to Ms. Tink.
Through you, Your Worship. We've had this in place for 5 years now, so the security won't change with the renewal. And in our agreement, we did negotiate provisions for security and privacy that meet city standards.
And so if I could, just one more question along the idea. I'm starting to learn a little bit more about who owns data and so on. So is there any implication for us in terms of, as we kind of don't have it, I don't know, sitting right here in front of me on this whatever machine, but it's kind of out there. Can you just tell me a little bit about ownership of the data?
Yeah, we continue. Through you, Your Worship, we continue to own all of our data, and we have exclusive access to that as well. No one else can access our data.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donald. Other questions? Councillor Murray.
Sure. Thank you, through your worship. Just to piggyback off of Councillor O'Donnell's question, the data that we have that we own, we never sell that data, correct?
Ms. Tink?
Through you, no, absolutely not.
Just want to make sure Zuckerberg doesn't have it. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Great.
Not like Facebook. Okay. Other questions or comments on the report? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, we have the placemaking, street painting, and project update. Councillor Massanelli.
Sorry. I forgot. I'm just trying to get it.
18-36.
Yeah. City Council approved the expansion of the street painting pilot project to up to a maximum of 3 additional locations in 2018. These locations will include Harbour Landing, the Downtown Business Improvement District, and the Warehouse Business Improvement District, subject to locations meeting the criteria of the pilot project.
Okay. Can I have a seconder for that, please? Okay. Councillor Hawkins. Discussion on the report. It's a great project. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The lead service connection management program update. Councillor Massanelli.
Okay. The administration be directed to provide a report to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee and sorry, I'm lost again because my tablet just moved on me.
Your Worship, just a point of procedure, all of our tablets keep crashing at various places.
Mm-hmm.
Is there some problem with the system?
Well, as we're waiting for the.
Thank you. I got it now.
Okay, after you ask the question after you finished. Our IT person just left, though, so maybe we don't know.
Yeah. I did have part of it there. I thought I was on the wrong thing because it opened and closed on me. That administration be directed to provide a report to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee annually, which details the progress of the lead service connection management program.
Perhaps the administration could provide a verbal description of this so that we can, more than just what's in the actual recommendation, which is really a receive and file. So, Mr. Kyle, could you please guide us on this?
Through you, Your Worship. This report is to provide City Council with information and awareness about the lead service connection management program, and it's also an opportunity for Council to ask any questions or concerns they may have on this management program. This issue was presented to Council last year, at which time lead filters and in-home testing was approved. So those that had lead connections could get filters for their lead services. It is a corporate concern we're dealing with in a collaborative approach. Our priority on this is public health and safety. Regina's water supply and the water supply of the city of Regina and water mains, for the most part, is safe and free of lead. It's mainly the service connections. Most of these were built prior to 1960. We know that they're still in use, and we have plans to address them as we do infrastructure upgrades and infrastructure work. And we're doing this on a proactive basis to get ahead of any regulation or requirements to do so. In 2017, city staff collected data through tap water testing study. The results of that study indicated that this program should continue or be enhanced. In 2018, we plan to continue focus on developing further program elements, collecting data, and advising potentially affected property owners. Technical information has improved over the years, as well as the awareness of the adverse health effects, and we anticipate new industry standings regulating lead and service connections in the next couple of years. Data collection will be the first steps in that, and this program helps put us ahead of any regulations.
Thank you, Mr. Kyle. So I'll open up the questions. Any questions? We have Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. Administration, if you could, maybe expand a little bit on the communication strategy. And specifically, Mr. Kyle had mentioned notifying property owners. What about areas of town where there's a higher proportion of renters, and you have a property owner that's kind of negligent or not paying attention to this? What's the outreach strategy to go right to those tenants? And what powers do they have to access city services in terms of the filters and other forms of lead mitigation strategies here?
Mr. Kyle?
Your Worship, I'll start and I'll pass on to Mr. Doney, but the awareness campaign we're trying to get out is citywide to these older properties, and these filters and other means are not only eligible to homeowners, but they're eligible to renters or anyone in that resident that's identified with a lead connection.
Mr. Doney.
Your Worship, as mentioned, we will be sending letters to residents that live in these homes, and so it will not only be to landowners, but to the residents that are living in the homes.
Thank you. All my questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Bresciani.
Your Worship, my question was answered. Thank you.
Well, that's falling off the table here. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. My question to the administration is this. What do these filters look like? How do they work? Who pays for them? Are there other options?
Mr. Kyle.
Through you, Your Worship, these filters are small filters you can install on your home faucet. The Waterworks Department, as part of their program, is currently funding one filter per household. So if residents want additional filters for their taps, they can purchase these in stores, and they run from probably about $30 to $50. And we also provide 1 year of replacement filters. There are other options that residents could do. They could have an inline system installed in like their basement that would filter the water for the entire house, which would be a little more costly. Or they could upfront the water service replacement on their property and wait for the city to come in and complete our portion. Part of the intent is that if a resident has a lead service connection, we would encourage them to replace that service at the same time we replace our service, so that there's no traces left once work's been done.
Your Worship, one follow-up question, if I may. Can you, when you test the water in a home, say it's over the recommended lead contamination rate, can you tell whether that's coming from a city connection or a home connection?
Mr. Kyle?
The lead, through your worship, the lead test itself does not actually identify where the lead is coming from. It identifies that the lead is in the system. So we have records on our service connections to identify what city connections are lead. It is the responsibility of the homeowner to check the plumbing inside of their house or have a qualified person check it to ensure that it's lead-free.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Other questions, Councillor Bresciani.
Thank you, through your worship. Just a comment. I think communication is key, and I know engagement in trying to get the message out to residents. I guess one of the suggestions that I hope that maybe if there's any chance that even there could be something on the bill that goes out. I mean, a letter is good, but it's a one-time thing. So if there's anything that it comes in repetition, I think that's important because, again, I think especially even for some of the rental properties, apartments, all that kind of stuff, I think it's there's a big piece there that needs to happen in one letter. I'm not sure we'll cut it, but if it gets it in repetition, I think that, just a suggestion, I'll leave it there, but I do think that engagement is very, very important in this and doing that, but I'll leave that to administration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brasciani. If there's no other speakers to the report, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Move on to Report 38, which is discretionary use application for petroleum storage facility. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you. Could I have a seconder for this, please?
Seconder for the report, please. Councillor Murray.
Thanks very much. So this is an application for 2 large petroleum storage facility containers at 550 East 9th Avenue North. So this is in the refinery area. These are the same large tanks that you would see if you went down the Ring Road or down Winnipeg Street North. These are very large. The area is set up already to host these based on standards set by the province of Saskatchewan. What you're being asked is to approve the land use here, and the province then is the one who has to enforce and agree to all of the standards from protecting the aquifer, setting up the buffer area, and so on. We saw no problem with this because this is what the area is designed for and would seek concurrence, please.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Any comments or questions on this report? All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Next report is a discretionary use application for Westera subdivision. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thank you again. May I have a seconder, please?
Seconder for the report. Councillor Young.
Thanks very much. So the address is 1701 Barley Street. This is consistent house development in the area of a new development in Westera. This is an extension. Obviously, there's been some success in terms of people moving out to the area, so they're carrying on. 97 stalls are required. 153 are in place here. 97 dwelling units. Again, seek concurrence. Have no issue with this.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Discussion on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. 2 information reports, one on the Mayor's Housing Commission and Public Works and Infrastructure Committee on the Residential Road Renewal Program. A motion to put those on the floor, please. These are both received and filed. Councillor Flagel. Seconder, please. Okay, Councillor Brasciani. Any discussion on either one of the reports? Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. With respect to the local roads reports, it deals with really with C roads and explains that there's a maintenance policy in place with respect to those roads. Councillor Young, amongst others, have requested a report on whether or not the proportion of money spent in the local roads program for D roads, that is the roads that are really in poor shape that have to be rebuilt, can't be increased. I'm wondering where we are with respect to that report dealing with the D roads in very poor condition.
Mr. Kyle.
Your Worship, administration is finalizing that report and is hoping to be bringing it back in June for council to debate.
Very good. I just want to note that in my ward, I've had a string of residents this spring. I've been out to see them, and there are really some roads in very desperate shape, and they're becoming not willing to wait much longer. It's important that we maintain resident support for the local road programs, which means I think we're going to have to pay some further attention to the D very poor roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you. To Your Worship, I have some questions about the information report coming from the Mayor's Housing Commission, specifically regarding upgrading and dealing with housing stock, and specifically older properties that are in disrepair. I was wondering if the administration could comment a little bit on the opportunities available and the investments being made in existing housing stock. I noticed in the report the data suggests that over the years the quality of housing is increasing. What are we doing to address the ongoing problems, and what kind of finances are available currently to address this?
Ms. Howard?
I'll start and then I'll ask Ms. Bisdell to go into the details. There is federal programs. Currently we don't have any programs in place for the except for when somebody's looking at our capital grants to turn it into affordable housing. But I might ask Ms. Bisdell to go through all of the federal program.
Ms. Bisdell?
Through you, Your Worship. The National Housing Strategy was released at the end of 2017. As we go through 2018, we're going to be learning more information on what programs or how the federal government would like to see grants or incentives pursued in municipalities. We don't have anything currently, but we are preparing to do a review of the housing incentive policy in 2019 and possibly align some of those initiatives with the direction of the National Housing Strategy.
Thank you. In its budget decision to eliminate or scale back, at the very least, the housing supplement, the provincial government cited growing vacancy rates, specifically in the major cities of Saskatoon and Regina. And that's the rationale for clawing back this type of financial support for the poorest residents. At the same time, if we look at CMHC data, it suggests that the cost of rent on average, especially for 2 bedrooms, is going up. So we're not seeing a cooling of rent as vacancy goes up. So we're seeing this kind of mismatch in the logic of the market, if you will. What's being done to address this, and where might we be able to confront this in terms of policy, that the vacancy rates and affordability aren't actually aligning at this juncture?
We are not actually responsible for rents. That's where the provincial government does that. It's beyond our mandate, but the administration may have some other comments on that one. Ms. Harlock?
I'll start and then ask Ms. Bisdell. So within our program, if somebody was accessing our grant program, we do have things that are tied to the affordable housing to allow for those rents to be lower. So that's where right now I believe that we would be, with our program, being able to look at that for those. I don't know if Ms. Bisdell has anything else to add.
Through your worship, I'm not sure if you also read in the report that the affordable housing rentals are not part of the CMHC stats. So basically there is zero vacancy in those affordable homes or rentals. So I guess what we're trying to do with our housing incentive program is to increase the supply of those rental properties so we can relieve the unaffordability.
Great. Thank you. I guess just a final comment, and His Worship's absolutely correct, and I think it's worth mentioning that we don't have control over rents. But at the same time, as we discuss planning, as we discuss new development, building more houses and building more and developing more property doesn't necessarily mean affordability. So I think it's important as folks come before council and we talk about new neighborhood plans, et cetera, we're not necessarily making Regina more affordable and accessible, especially for the most economically disadvantaged. So I think it's important that we kind of temper this notion that vacancy equals an accessible housing market for folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Stevens. Other questions or comments on either one of the information reports? Both are on the floor for discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now we'll move into motion 18-5. This is the Snow Angel program. Councillor Stevens or Bresciani, whoever wants to introduce that report.
Great, thank you.
Councillor Stevens.
All right, don't fail me now, computer. This is just an extension from the last discussion we had in February about sidewalks and sidewalk accessibility. We've heard the arguments. There was an extensive delegation here last time. I guess my first point is simply to cite again the Transportation Master Plan. I went back to that very important document and read through the commentary. And that is one of the most important issues, I would argue, and I think the most significant, is that residents have long demanded that collectively we do a better job of clearing snow and ice from sidewalks. And if we're going to address the fundamentals of the Transportation Master Plan, it's talking about walkability, active modes of transportation. And in the research that Councillor Bresciani and I took on, when we examined other winter cities, and I even investigated some American cities, there's really 3 pillars that they use to improve walkability and accessibility. One would be bylaws and enforcement. The other would be an equivalent of a winter maintenance policy. And the third is an encouragement/Snow Angels program. They have different names, but Snow Angel seems to be the most common and the most accessible in terms of what people understand. And I would argue that despite these, what we think of as abnormal winter storms this year, walkability is a perennial issue. And so we're not really going to say climate change is going to solve this. It's an ongoing issue. So the motion here actually addresses the comments that I heard both from the community as well as fellow councillors in terms of let's look for an incentive and encouragement-based model. And that's really what the language does here. And we have many examples in this province and across North America, I would argue, to develop really a best practice. What I'm focusing on, what we've both focused on here, is the community engagement element. So it's not just the city. We'll deal with that, I would argue, when we discuss the winter maintenance policy and the investment in snow clearing. This is really about bridging the city with community associations. Specifically, communities where there might be a higher than average number of residents who have accessibility issues. It might mean a concentration of neighborhoods where there are Regina Housing Authority buildings, seniors complexes, and so on. So really what this is looking for is administration to craft a community-based initiative and to factor this into the 2019 budget deliberations. And I guess I would just ask administration, there's no timeline stipulated in this motion. Do you need further guidance, or is there enough here to kind of work a report into the 2019 budget process?
You actually have it in here by consideration as part of the 2019 budget's number 4. It's actually timed in there.
Oh, I'm just curious maybe what the time, if we need like a queue in there, or if this is enough guidance in terms of timelines.
So through your worship, yeah, the direction would be that we would go away, do the research, create a report, and it would be available for consideration as a part of the 2019 budget. So this is clear. We need no additional direction.
Great, thank you. I'll leave it up to other councillors to make comments.
Thank you very much. Councillor Berchiani.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I won't repeat anything Councillor Stevens has said, but just to elaborate how the program has worked in other cities. It's a volunteer program. And what it does is it matches volunteers with people who are unable to shovel. And I think one of the other things it's very, very important is it actually engages our community organizations. So our schools, our churches, our community associations, and kind of brings everybody together to work together to help these people who are unable to shovel. One of the things that when the delegations came forward and spoke with the sidewalk clearing was that they are really begging and pleading for some help. And the research that I've done, and as Councillor Stevens indicated, that in other cities, this program has worked and it's helped them. So I think one of the big things that, you know, we have about 33,000 people with disability. That's a stat from 2011. So many of those individuals do become snowbound in the winter. As well, we heard also from the Seniors Mechanism Group that they advocate for seniors that want to get out in the winter. So again, the key for this one, this program is you become an angel by helping someone else out. The last piece of this is a nomination. And this is where I think, it just, for us to say thank you on behalf of the city for helping your neighbor out to either if it's a recognition by some kind of a certificate or, you know, whatever the committee decides. But I think that's another big piece of it. One of the, I had a call when we were bringing the sidewalk motion last time, and he's actually lives in Regina but spends a lot of time in Saskatoon with his son. He shovels there. Well, he got an award for the Snow Angel in Saskatoon, and he shovels here as well. So again, I think it's a big part. I know in the schools, in the classrooms, what they do is they actually, some classrooms will challenge other classrooms and through the schools, and then they'll end up with a pizza lunch. So it kind of brings the community together. I would hope that we can even bring in partners like the universities, our football teams, as well as even the Rough Riders. So with that, I'll leave it for others. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Berchiani. Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm definitely going to support this motion. I think we saw this happening. I think we saw people helping one another. We saw snow angels in that last big snowfall we had, and lots of people that I talked to were really pleased to be able to help their neighbors. So I think it will be well received by the community. But I have a question for the chair. We have asked for a snow removal review as well. When is that due? Do we have a date for that?
I don't think a formal date was on that at all. It was more of a public discussion, but I can ask the administration when they feel this will come back. That report will come back. Mr. Kyle?
Through your worship, we're looking at bringing that report back in Q2 or Q3 of 2019 so that any financial implications can be presented prior to the 2020 budget.
Okay. I asked that question, Mr. Chair, because I have neighborhoods that have no sidewalks and their roads are so poor they can't walk on them. So there's going to have to be something to consider when we look at snow removal for certain areas of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. Councillor Flagel?
Thank you, and I support this as well too. But I've heard a lot of tracking for organizations and groups. And what about? Is there any way that you've heard or seen tracking neighbor to neighbor? I've seen where one guy has a snowblower and he goes and he does 5 neighbors. Nobody knows that except the other his 4 neighbors. Do we find a way to enhance that type of thing other than, like, I know we used to give away a snowblower. Well, the guy already has one, so it's kind of redundant. But that would be something to look at as well, because in neighborhoods, that seems to be a big thing. Community groups, like you're talking the Riders and the Rams and the Thunder and Red Sox baseball, if the kids are still around, they can go out and do those things. But the majority of the stuff is residential. Is there any way that Saskatoon or whoever knows, wherever else there's information, anything that we can find out about those types of things as well would definitely enhance this going forward? Any comments?
That'd be part of the review, I think, for the administration to come back to that.
I'm hoping so, yeah. Okay. So now I have one other thing regarding snow. When are we going to get a chance to sit down with the winter snow maintenance review coming so that we can talk about it next fall?
So I would keep in mind, again, we're talking about snow busters, which is not the program we do to remove snow. I'll give you one question, but I don't want to pursue it because we're on snow angels only. We're not on, with respect, we're not on the annual snow clearing policy.
No.
That's not what this is.
No, I get that, but
So I'll allow you I'll allow you one question, that's it.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Kyle.
Thanks.
Through you, your worship, we're just in the process of setting up our communication and scheduling for this. You have to understand, our crews were in winter, our winter staff was in full winter mode until last week. So we've only been out of winter mode a week, so we're starting to work on looking at the Snow Routes pilot project as well as the review of the policy. So we're just starting the planning and work on that. It should be ongoing throughout the summer and into the fall and winter.
Okay, I'll leave it at that. Perfect, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Other speakers to the report? Councillor Findera.
Thank you, Your Worship. I too support the Snow Angels. I've had a conversation with the Secretary of a councillor in Calgary way back in days, and that system works. And if you notice, we're talking about the last thing we talked about sidewalks, and I did not vote. I didn't vote for getting a bylaw out there, but I am definitely in supportive of Snow Angel. What that tells me is there's a lot of people out there in the neighborhood that help each other, and this brings neighbors together. With a bylaw, some will look at it and say it's, here we go, we're going to force us to do something. This way, the Snow Angel, and again, I think there was a comment made that what's wrong with bringing them out to the city hall here or into the chamber, give them a plaque, put it in the leader post. It gives them a little bit of a feel-good moment. So I do support this. So hopefully we get a good review and bring this thing on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Findera. Other speakers to the report? Councillor Massanelli, do you want to take the chair, please? Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I'm going to support the motion. It's a great outline of the program. I had a question. I think I'm getting an answer now. As I read this over the weekend, I had a question related to incent the community. And so I understand, just to be clear, and I'll ask either one of the movers of this, is this something like offering a plaque, as was suggested, or a reward of some kind, or is it we're going to pay community associations to get volunteers to do this? Because if it's the latter, I won't support it. If it is incenting, because the spirit of the discussion is a volunteer program, and I totally support that. This is very much in keeping with what Council talked about last time. So is that what this is about, is to design some small ways to recognize individuals who have gone out of their way to be an angel? Either one.
I would leave the details up to administration, but frankly, if it's a high five or a thumbs up, I don't care what it is, so long as it works. So the task here is canvass different cities and communities where these programs are functional, and we see a noticeable improvement in the quality of walkability, and then we model around that. So it isn't about cash, but we do have community associations at our disposal. These associations already do community cleanups and other initiatives, so I would task administration through whatever means to figure out what is a functional strategy to incentivize and encourage.
So we'll see. Those terms are broad, and we'll see what comes back. I will hedge my discussion to say absolutely yes on it, depending upon what kind of incenting is brought forward. I like the idea of the plaque. The recognition to me works well, because as we saw in the foot of snow we got in 36 hours, we have many angels across our city who did this without prompting, help their neighbors, and not just on the street, but other places as well. So we have a good basis for people wanting to help out, and the volunteer side of this is really encouraging. So in as much as I understand the incentive part of it, I'm okay with it, but certainly the spirit of it with respect to the volunteer program, I will support that as well. Thank you. If there's no other speakers, I'll see if Councillor Stevens or Bresciani wants to close debate. Okay, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Notice of motion, Councillor Flagel. You can read the motion, but there's no debating it.
Regarding a condo waste rebate, whereas City Council approved the condominium waste collection grant program in 2002, and whereas City Council eliminated the condo waste rebate as part of the 2017 annual budget, and whereas Section 27 of the procedural bylaw number 9004, allowed a member to have City Council reconsider a decision, and whereas condominium owners are required to pay property taxes for waste removal services they are not able to utilize. Therefore, be it resolved that administration be directed to bring forward a report in Q3. There's, I think, a slight change in that. I thought it was Q2, but I'll ask that in a second.
There's no debating. You table it. You can discuss it next month, but there's no debating it.
Okay, yeah, Q3 of 2018 to the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee that provides the following information: cost and implications of reinstating the condominium waste rebate program, and options that would enable all condominiums to utilize the city's waste removal services. Respectfully submitted, Jerry Flagel, Councillor Ward 10.
Thank you, Councillor Flagel. Move on to next order of business. This is report 18-40. This is Executive Committee report, the endeavor to assist amendment to servicing agreement and development levy agreement policy. Councillor Massanelli.
That Appendix A, the administration of servicing agreement and development levy agreement policy, be effective immediately upon approval by City Council.
Have a seconder for that, please. Councillor Murray. Maybe the administration can provide a real quick overview of this one. This is a very important policy related to how we, how second and third developers come into an area that's being developed. Yep. And perhaps Ms. Hardlock, you can give us a brief overview of that.
Sure. Through you, Your Worship. So when we changed the policy for the SIF policy back in 2015, part of our policy change was growth pays for growth, so we were switching a large portion of the costs that we usually typically upfronted and then tried to collect later. We put that actually now on the onus was on the developers, and we implemented what we call an endeavor to assist. And so what it was is that when we need them to upgrade, they might need just a small capacity, but in order to get the whole area serviced, we'd ask them to pick up those costs, and then when those other lands developed, we'd collect the fees for them. That was the endeavor to assist. What ended up happening is that when we started doing the development and trying to operationalize this component and work through the servicing agreement fees, we realized that it was more complicated than that. And so the decision is that we worked with the developers to really look at sanitary pump and lift stations, because those are really on a catchment area, not just a defined area. So they're on a larger area. And we worked very collaboratively with the development community to come up with a compromise to allow it so that we could accommodate their needs in order to look at how we collect those fees. And so that's what's before you today is the changes to the SAF to look at how we spread those costs over an area basis with the developers. So it was a very collaborative process. We are committed to go back and look at stormwater infrastructure, underground service means for water and wastewater infrastructure, and road network in the coming year or so. So that's the amendments that we're putting forward. I'm not sure if Ms. Bisdell has anything else.
Ms. Bisdell, do you have anything else to add? Okay. Discussion on the report. Councillor O'Donnell.
Thanks. Thank you. First of all, I appreciate all the work that's gone in, and I support this fully. Just thought I'd share an interesting interview that I saw today. It came out of Toronto. And of course, housing affordability in Toronto is a rising notion. And there's a lot of pushback occurring into this concept of growth pays for growth. Now, we've been at growth pays for growth for a number of years, and this council and the previous council were very supportive of that. I suggest that we don't change and take serious note of what's in this report. And there, the pushback is that it benefits the whole community when we grow, and therefore the whole community should be paying for all of these things. So arguments we heard many years ago haven't gone away. I like what's here. I want to stay with this.
Thank you, Councillor O'Donnell. Other discussions? I would note that the Home Builders Association appeared as a delegation at Executive Committee and supports this report. It's important to know that as well. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Executive Committee report, records retention, disposal schedules, bylaw, the biggest report in the history of the City of Regina right before us. It's about 1,000 pages. Councillor Massanelli, it's all yours.
Well, no. That bylaw number 2012-18, the records retention and disposal bylaw 2012 be amended as follows. Schedule A. City of Regina administrative records and retention schedule attached to this report replace Appendix A of bylaw 2012-18. And Schedule B, City of Regina operational records retention schedule attached to this report replace Appendix B of bylaw 2012-18. And I didn't proofread every page.
Well, on that note, I'm going to ask Mr. Clerk to give us a summary of the report. So members of the audience that are watching tonight will know what's in the report. Mr. Clerk?
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an exhaustive schedule. Something
it certainly is.
stating the obvious. A properly executed records retention schedule just allows everyone to have a quick and appropriate disposal of our records. It reduces our potential liabilities due to failure to comply with other legislative requirements, be that for information retention and preservation. And so basically this is a very internal administrative document that safeguards our records for privacy and other safekeeping retention implications. Is that
sufficient? Works for me. Is there any questions on this report?
No.
So did we get a seconder for that one? Okay, I need a seconder for the report. Councillor Murray moves that. Discussion on this tome. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Clerk, for that. We now have Finance Administration, 3 reports. The first one's on the property tax bylaw, 2018, and the education property tax bylaw. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a recommendation from Finance and Administration Committee that the City Solicitor be instructed to prepare the necessary property tax bylaws for consideration by City Council to include the municipal mill rate, the other taxing authority mill rates, the mill rate factors, and the Business Improvement District mill rates as outlined in Appendix A.
Seconder for that, please. Councillor O'Donnell.
This is simply an implementation report. These matters have all been discussed by Council earlier.
Right. Okay. Are there any discussions on this? Councillor Young.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have one question. I was reading about this online, and the mill rate factor for residential and condominiums last year was 1.0, and this year it's 0.9. And I just wondered if that was a tool to spread it out, or
that was what we approved to council.
Oh, yes, it was approved. I'm just asking why there was the change.
Ms. Harlock?
Your Worship, I'd ask Ms. Bryden to provide the information, or Ms. Mills.
Ms. Bryden?
Through Your Worship, there should be no change for the mill rate factors for residential, so we'll endeavor to look at the website and correct that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Young. All those in favor of the report? Opposed? That's carried. Next one is Finance Administration Annual Property Tax Exemption. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Your Worship. Recommendation that the property tax exemptions listed in Appendix A be approved, subject to the Government of Saskatchewan approving the exemption or partial exemption of the education portion of taxes for the amounts that are $25,000 or greater. The City Solicitor be instructed to bring forward this ballot to provide property tax exemptions listed in Appendix A, and that the Executive Director of City Planning and Development or a delegate be authorized to apply the Government of Saskatchewan on behalf of property owners for any exemption of the education portion of the taxes that are $25,000 or greater for property tax exemptions listed in Appendix A.
Seconder for that, please. Okay. Councillor Flagel. Discussion on the report.
I would just say these are the list of exemptions. We've for 2018. We've dealt with 2019 and the regime that will be in place there, but these are for 2018.
Okay. Discussion on the report. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. The final Finance and Committee report is a boundary alteration for the 2018 property exemptions. Councillor Hawkins.
Your Worship, if you'll bear with me for one moment. Recommendation that the property tax exemption listed in Appendix A and B be approved, subject to the Government of Saskatchewan approving the exemption or partial exemption for the education portion of taxes, $25,000 or greater, City Solicitor, etc., and the Executive Director of City Planning or delegate be authorized to apply, etc.
Discussion on the, or actually seconder for that report. Just a moment. I want to need a seconder first. Councillor Young. So this report relates to 3 different categories of exemptions that were put into place as we annexed the land a few years ago. I think that Ms. Harlock wants to speak on this.
No, sorry, we just, through Your Worship, we were just making sure that we thought you were doing the same report.
We're doing the same report. This is report 44.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We thought you were on
a different one?
Nope,
this is the one we're on. So, discussion on the report.
It's okay, I thought.
Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So I stumped the administration, in other words. Okay. So we now have bylaws. Councillor Massanelli, 6 bylaws for you.
Okay. So the bylaws are 2018-13, 14, 17, 20, and 21 and 22. The Regina Property Tax Bylaw 2018, the Education Property Tax Bylaw 2018, the Development Levy Amendment Bylaw 2018, the Properties Exempt from Taxation Bylaw 2018, the Property Exempt from Taxation as a result of the 2013 Municipal Boundary Alteration Bylaw 2018, and the Records Retention and Disposal Schedules Amendment Bylaw 2018. I move, seconded by Councillor Hawkins, that bylaws 2018-13, 14, 17, 20, 21, and 22 be introduced and read a first time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried.
Okay, I move seconded by Councillor Flegel that bylaws 2018-13, 14, 17, 20, 21, and 22 be read a second time.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I move seconded by Councillor Stevens that Council hereby consents to bylaws 2018-13, 14, 17, 20, 21, and 22 going to reading a third time at this meeting.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously.
And I move seconded by Councillor Young that bylaws 2018-13, 14, 17, 20, 21, and 22 be read a third time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Last bit of business is motion to adjourn.
Worship, to point out on a procedural point, there really was difficulty, I think, on this side of the room with the computer programming and the way the thing moves up and down.
Yeah, I just went all over.
Can we have someone look at that problem?
An undertaking to the administration. Just for the case in point, I could not download the agenda until Sunday morning. Maybe just my personal iPad's a problem. I don't know that. So the administration will take a look at that. Let's move adjournment.
No, yeah, well, that too. On another point of order, can we get Jason the microphone?
Q-tips are still legal here, but not in Britain.
On that note, mover, seconder, Councilor, all those in favor? Opposed? Oh, hold on. What? Okay.
Accesscom was not here tonight, and we're not live on our own thing, I don't think, are we? Oh, are they here? Because otherwise, all we would have would be Paul's tweets to know what's going on at City Council.
Well, we have leader post tweets too, which we can bounce off each other to see which one's right.
Too? Okay.
Okay,
All right.
Councilor Flagel, Councilor Young, seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Good night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.